Good afternoon, colleagues. It's 1 o'clock and we will be kicking off on time. Let me first of all welcome all the members of the department and Minister Mackenzie. We look forward to your presentation. I certainly got the sense from the committee members you are dealing with people that are very passionate about the same cause. Please feel free to brag a little bit about the World Heritage Site. I'm also very excited about that. But we're looking for a really engagement that tells us and drills down to the kinds of not just the departmental problems, but also the kind of causal societal issues that you're dealing with. And I know there's one or two very urgent issues coming up in the next year or so that this committee will also have to grapple with. But I'm going to, and also I just wanted to point out there's two of our committee members that will be joining online, Member Philander and Member Kassem. So we just need to keep in mind that there's also the online component of this presentation. But with those words, I declare the meeting open. I'm going to be asking each of the members to introduce themselves, similar to the safety component that we had the other day. I'm going to ask the department to all introduce themselves briefly, and then we will go into the presentation that you have. There's going to be an opportunity for questions questions also to be submitted, that we engage with one another. It is a first meeting. It's really about getting a feel for where we need to go as a committee as well. And then we will also be looking at, as a committee, we're going to be looking at potential oversight for this component of the committee's task going ahead. Colleagues, but with those words, if I can, I'll start with myself and then I'll move to the, in fact, I would like you to also introduce yourself. You're also part of this committee. And then we'll go around to the members, and then we'll start with the Minister and the rest of the department. So colleagues, I'm Thomas Walters. I'm the chairperson of this particular committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wasim Matthews, Procedural Officer.
Benson Mwenzo, a member of this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, the Minister, and our learned officials. I'm Member Boyson, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, everybody, Minister and members, and all the visitors here. I'm a member of this committee, and I'm Donita Stevens.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Benedicta van Minnen, and I'm a member of this committee.
If I can ask our colleagues online to also introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everybody. Aisha Kasim, I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, member of the committee.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And then over to you, Minister Mackenzie, and your department heads.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ricardo Mackenzie, Provincial Minister of Cultural Affairs and Sport, and I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members. My name is Guy Redman. I'm the Head of Department for Cultural Affairs and Sport.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Brenda Ratkus, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Chair, I'm Carol van Wyk. I'm the Chief Director, Cultural Affairs. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm Michael Janssen van Rensburg. I'm the Director for Museums, Heritage and Geographical Names, and also the CEO for Heritage Western Cape.
Good morning, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Lyndon Bauer. I'm the Chief Director for Sport and Recreation.
Afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Thabo Tutu, Director Sport Promotion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jackie Bull from the Youth and After School Program.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Danielle Manuel, and I'm the Director responsible for Sport Development.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Cecilia Sani, and I'm the Director for Library Service.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Themba Mkhunu. I'm the Director for Arts, Culture and Language.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Nomaza Dingayo. I'm the Director for Archives and Record Service.
Good afternoon all, Dion Burger. I'm in the office of the Head of Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon all, Chair. Michael Paardenwachter, Head of Ministry.
Thank you. And with those words of introduction, if I can hand over to yourself, Minister, and your team. As I said, we are here to explore, we're here to understand our work, and your work, and what our work consequentially will be. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can I just ask my colleagues to put the presentation up? And can I also just first say I've chaired this committee when I first came into Parliament nearly 11 years ago. And I really appreciate the work done by this department. It is personal to me. It is personal to people in this province. So it's an honor to come and present to the Standing Committee. That's why I left Beaufort West at 5 o'clock this morning, because I wanted to be here in person, because I took it very personally when the executive didn't come to Parliament. So, so I take this, I really appreciate that you've given us the opportunity to present. So I'm just going to start on the presentation outline. The vision of the department, our constitutional mandate, my priorities as the Minister for the next 5 years, and just an overview of the department. So that is the structure of the presentation going forward. What is the vision of this department? We all know the many challenges in our community. So what we want to achieve as the Western Cape Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, it's socially inclusive. What does it mean? It basically means that everyone in the Western Cape, regardless of their background or their circumstance, must have equal access to opportunities, and they can fully participate through our involvement in social, economics, and the cultural life that this province has to offer. Creativity, and we'll speak to more about it later, but obviously fostering the culture of innovation, problem solving, and adaptability. Active, all of us, including myself, wants to have a lifelong learning. We want to, living. We want to live as long as possible. So what it means that we all have to be active, and obviously people in this province must play, and performance must be part of their daily routine. And connected Western Cape to bring people together to build strong, healthy, safe, and more resilient communities, which we'll also unpack later on. There are constitutional amendments, mandates that obviously that guides us, that is responsible for the reason that all of us exist. And these are some of the matters that we cover. I'm not going to go through that in details, but I think I'll stop on the library part, because we are going to talk about that, and would appreciate the Standing Committee's role and help us in getting the libraries matter resolved, and which my colleagues will speak to later as well. And then I want to sit on this particular slide, which is my ministerial priorities. And I'm actually going to speak to that in some notes that I've written, so forgive me, but I'll speak to that here to ensure that that's aligned to what is there, and I don't invent a new priority as I sit here, because I have a tendency to see something and want to do something. So let me stick to the script, because I know this Parliament will hold me to account for what I'm going to present today. I just wanted to say, obviously, thank you for inviting us today. And you know, interesting, last night we had an open session with the community of the Beaufort West, which is a cabinet outreach programs. And we were the last man standing there. We were the last people there that everyone came to see, because the challenges, despite the fact that economic challenges, there's crime, there's health and the social development. But the community of Beaufort West understood what are the things that they want to be done now. And that's why we were the last man standing last night. All the other cabinet members were done with the citizens that engaged, and we still had people that wanted to see us. And it was very positive to see that the community of Beaufort West came us to stand in lines to see us last night. And it affirmed certainly my ministerial priorities and the department's plans for the next year, because everything that they spoke about last night is what we spoke about in our strategic session last week. What we spoke about informed our strategic priorities and our ministerial priorities. Every single thing that every community member came to, and the team will get a briefing of that, whether it's school sport, whether it's cultural affairs matters, whether it's arts matters, whether it is events in Beaufort West, whether it is heritage, Khoisan. All the issues the community of Beaufort West came to speak to me about was matters that we can address and can work with. One of the things that I really enjoyed was a young man, Luvuyo Tom, or Lutando Tom. So the two of them came, so Luvuyo or Lutando, but both of them came one after each other. And he presented a video that he made using his YP50 on its own, no support from anyone. It was just incredible to see that the initiative a young man of Beaufort West took to wrote a script with his friends and his family and everyone that participated and made a video. So how do we, as cultural affairs and sport, help that young man and build that? So I've shared it on my social media last night because I was really impressed with what I saw. And I went to his Facebook this morning. I saw he shared it and some of the comments I saw. It is at a rim under your heart, very positive to see how many people are saying is happy government is involved. So how do you take that further? So one of our priorities, I'm going to start with a very important one, which is reintroducing school sport. We are committed to reintroducing and revitalizing school sport in the Western Cape, recognizing its profound impact on the holistic development of our learners, from enhancing the health and fitness to boosting academic performance and fostering the essential social skills. School sports play a critical role in shaping well-rounded individuals. Through our renewed focus, we aim to foster an environment where every student has an opportunity to thrive and ensuring their well-being, inclusion, and mental health are prioritized. This initiative is not just about physical activity, it's about nurturing talent and preparing our youth for a balanced and successful future. Second thing priority is the sporting and events hub of Africa. Our region has the potential to become the premier sporting and cultural events hub of Africa. By strategically securing investment, we will stimulate economic growth and job creation. We plan to enhance our recreational, sporting, cultural, film, arts, and heritage events, transforming the Western Cape into a vibrant center of activity. This initiative will not only boost our local economy, but also accelerate our cultural profile on a continental and global scale. Our third priority is reimagine libraries. In the 21st century, libraries must evolve to meet the demand of digital age while retaining community-centric services. Our new service delivery model for libraries will integrate our cutting-edge digital resources and transform libraries into dynamic community hubs. These spaces will not only offer access to technology, foster innovation, and provide inclusive environments for all. We envisage library as creative spaces where creativity and learning converge, ensuring that they remain relevant and essential in our communities. And one of the things that we really came up with is the Almal model. Now we know Almal means everyone in Afrikaans, but it's also archives, libraries, museum, and languages. How do we incorporate and bring all that into our nearly more than 370 libraries that we have in the Western Cape? We have the libraries. How do we build on that to provide better services to our communities? That's something very special, and the team has been working on it. I think the chief librarian came to see them already in February around how do we envisage libraries. So when we started, we just built on work that's already been developed. So really a great foundation built by the team. Our next priority is Heritage Western Cape. We want to preserve our cultural heritage. We want to preserve all our heritage in the Western Cape, whether it's buildings, every piece of heritage we want to preserve. But how do we promote development while preserving heritage? And that is something that we're looking at by balancing development, which is obviously helping our economy, with preservation. And we aim to create a future that honors our past while embracing progress. And there comes to, if I can speak to our World Heritage Site. It was obviously the first international trip with the department. Me and the head of department and our colleague, Michael Janssen van Rensburg, represented the Western Cape, but it was a government, the national government was part of this. And it was incredible, the cohesion that we worked together in these nomination, which is Pinnacle Point in Mossel Bay, Deep Kloof, and Sibutu Cave in KwaZulu-Natal. And I can really ask the Standing Committee, if there's one thing the Standing Committee do this, please visit those two sites. I think it'll really be an injustice if the Standing Committee don't visit those sites. It's the heritage sites of the Western Cape, and we should all own it, we should promote it, and we should make sure it's accessible for everyone in the Western Cape to understand where we come from as humanity. And if I can just add on that, yes, it was a World Heritage Site, and with now World Heritage Site, and there's a management agency that we must build on to preserve the cultural heritage of the Western Cape, enable job creation, etc., etc. But one thing that really stood out for me, when the nominations were done and we've received the inscription and the inscription of the Nelson Mandela Liberation Route, after the nominations were done, there's a process where the country must speak for 2 or 3 minutes, and I spoke for 3 minutes. And the feeling, if I can use probably the Afrikaans word, gees describe it better than any other language, amongst 2,000 delegates from 150 countries. That obviously, as you know, each country is identified by their name. And after the inscription of the Nelson Mandela Liberation Route, the queue was so long of people coming to wish us and shake our hands and coming to take pictures with South Africa that the chairperson of the session had to call order in the meeting and ask people to please stop celebrating South Africa, go and during your lunch and your tea time, go and celebrate them. And that to me was, yes, we have received the tangible part, we got a World Heritage Site, etc., 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 but the intangible part, the fact, the hope that the world has for us as a country. It was that feeling when you see Siya Kolisi standing up there with the World Cup and hosting the World Cup, that sense of pride to be a South African, the sense of joy that the world is looking at us and want to celebrate that moment with us was just, you just can't buy. There's not an amount of money in this world that can buy that. And the spirit of the GNU and the spirit of moving forward as a country, we've shared that with our national minister who was not present yet. He was in Paris, as you all know. And that really, and Cabinet, National Cabinet also released a press statement around the 3 World Heritage Sites. It's really something that we should also own and celebrate. And we as the Western Cape will certainly take it forward, and the new management agency will certainly not only take the tangible part, the intangible part forward as to how we can build social cohesion in our communities. The last priority, which is cultural and heritage through language. Language is the cornerstone of our cultural heritage. Now, we all know, and we've also received a letter from the president, that the deputy president has now been tasked with the tradition and Khoisan culture, and obviously we'll engage with him going forward. But from our side as the Western Cape, one of my priorities, ministerial priorities, is to own the cultural and the heritage part. The recognition part sits with local government, and the national department, our provincial department, and the deputy president will have to work on the recognition part. But the intangible part, the language, the preservation of the culture, the heritage, that sits with us. And that is one of my ministerial priorities. How do we preserve that? One of the things that we all know, everybody that watch rugby knows, the haka, the All Blacks, and you're going to see it live on the 7th of September. Watch it, so not live, see it on TV. Let me not. So you're going to see it live. You're going to see it on TV. So that part, and we all know how that has been incorporated into the culture. So how do we incorporate many of our traditions and our cultures into our society as the Western? We all know rooibos, we know buchu, we know many of these traditional medicines and cultures. How do we incorporate it? I think that's something that I'm going to drive as my ministerial priorities, and certainly with approval of Cabinet, which we've already had meetings on this particular priorities, we're going to drive that for the people of the Western Cape. Every part of our culture should become part of our daily life. They've done it in New Zealand, they do it in other countries. India's, it's an amazing example how they've done their cultural heritage. We've got it. We've got Robben Island. We've got now the World Heritage Sites. We have incredible museums in the Western Cape. And that is something, Chairperson, one of my biggest regrets, certainly when I was Chairperson, is something that I did not focus on. I focus on sports, I focus on, but museums, that heritage that we can bring back so people know where they're coming from, so people know the history. There's something a bit of unasked advice that I do think the standing committee should also focus for. In conclusion, I just want to say our plan that we are presenting today, our overview, certainly with a foundation that I'm very privileged. There's a team led by Mr. Guy Redmond and the top management team that is here today. Will certainly take this forward and help. While our colleagues are busy creating jobs, while our colleagues are busy trying to make the Western Cape safer, we have a bigger role to play. We have a role to play to get our youth active in the afternoon, the whole of the Western Cape active, build social cohesion, build on our culture and our heritage that we have in our Western Cape, use our libraries, our alma model so people can make better, our communities make better use of our libraries, and of course, reintroduce school sports. So these are our priorities that we will take forward through the strategic process over the next few months through the budget process to make sure that it's all funded. Obviously, as we all know, all these things cost money. But I think with that opening remarks, I'll hand over to the head of department, who's going to take us through the rest of the presentation. Unless the committee wants to ask me some questions now, it's up to the chairperson. Thank you.
Colleagues, given the way that the questions went last week, it's my belief we should go through the whole presentation because some of, if we break it up, some of the questions become repetitive. Or rather have us have a proper engagement at the end. So colleagues, please write down your questions. I'm certainly making notes. I'm already looking at how I'm going to limit my number of questions because it is a fascinating topic. But please continue with the rest of your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for the introduction. Good afternoon again, members. So the department is structured as per the organogram on the screen. There's two chief directorates. One is Cultural Affairs, the other one is Sport and Recreation. In Cultural Affairs, we have 4 directorates. We've got museums, heritage, geographical names, services, we've got libraries, we've got arts, culture and language services, and then we have the archives. We also have the enterprise content management solution that we have for the rest of Western Cape government that also reports in cultural affairs because it is linked to records management, which currently resides in the archives. On the other hand, we have the Chief Directorate Sport and Recreation, which has 2 directorates, one sport development and the other one sport promotion. We then have the 2 sort of program 1 type directorates, financial management, and then strategic and operational management support. We then have a transversal youth program, which reports directly to the HOD, which covers the youth program across the DCAS, but is also responsible for running the youth forum, which looks at the youth programs across the Western Cape government. The department has 3 public entities, and the relevant directors will explain further what the public entities are about. We also will have some of the chairpersons joining us today. So it's Heritage Western Cape Cultural Commission, and the Western Cape Language Committee. The way that the department works is the managed network model. We work with many partners within our ecosystem. These are people that are involved in sports, arts and culture in any manner, shape or form, whether they're focusing on education, whether they're focusing on physical activity, whichever space that they are contributing to within the arts, culture, heritage and sports space. We don't do all of the work. It is not possible, whether you're looking at the budget of the department, but also the scale in which we need to do the work that needs to be done. The law also ensures that we work with federations. So the federations are there, they are covered in the law, and the department is supposed to work through the federations. In this graphic that I've shown you here, I've just listed some of the entities that we work with. So we work with sport federations, we work with our public entities, 3 public entities, we work with arts organizations, we've got Year Beyond, as well as the various NGOs within that network. We've got the affiliated museums, we've got the public libraries, which are run by municipalities, but funded by us. We set the standards for all of them. We've got the MOD and the NGOs associated with the MOD, and then we've got community arts centers, and then others in between that would fall in between that. This is a very important way of making sure that whatever little resources we have with joint agenda setting with partners within the sector, we are able to take whatever little that we're doing and collaborate better so that we have the impact that we are looking for. With each of these nodes, there's a whole lot of other tentacles that go out from those nodes, spreading to other partners that are also involved that may not be visible. For instance, in the sports federations, you've got the clubs and a whole lot of other structures that fall under that. The key to this is collaboration. We cannot do it without collaboration. A good example is the federation space, as well as what we have in our libraries. We have the biggest consortium of libraries in the country. It is the most professionally run service, and yet we don't run a single one of them. The municipalities are doing all of the work. We fund them. We monitor how they spend the money. We set the standards. We make sure that they meet the standards. And we also make sure that the conditional grant that we are given to run these libraries is spent 100% every year. But the municipalities are a very important part of this. We don't run the libraries ourselves. It's the municipalities who do the actual legwork. The three key principles that drive our strategy over the 2024 MTF. The first one is social cohesion, creating a shared future and sense of belonging. It's if we do what we do and we do it right, that is what we will achieve. Supporting social networks that connect groups together, developing a common sense of belonging, a shared future vision, and a focus what different social groups have in common. Encouraging participation and active engagement in safe spaces by people from different backgrounds, and fostering respect, development of an understanding of others, and recognition of the value of diversity. So that one is a very core part, and it forms part of the vision of the department. The second one is youth. There's a serious challenge with youth disillusionment, and it has been raised as a risk by the World Economic Forum, and it is a risk for our country, it's a risk for our continent, and we need to make sure that our youth have got the grit, they've got the ways and means to be able to realize the dreams that they have. They can't just be not having ways out. They need to rely on their own imagination and also then be capacitated and believe in themselves and their abilities to achieve whatever vision and dreams they have for themselves. That does not happen easily, and that cannot happen only within a school setting. It happens when kids are playing team sports. It happens when you are involved in arts and culture. It happens when you are reading. Imagination comes in, and that's what then builds that wonderful thing we call hope. The youth also account for 2/3 of the unemployment in South Africa, which is a huge challenge for us. The youth are our future parents, leaders, professionals, and community members. They hold the hope and the frustrations of the current context. So the main thing there that we are trying to achieve is giving youth a sense of purpose and pathways to become productive residents. Then the last one is mental well-being. It has always been there bubbling under, but became into sharp focus post the COVID pandemic. The effects of the mass trauma that we went through with COVID, how we conducted some of the funerals of our loved ones, the grief that has not been addressed, postponed grief is very dangerous, and it elevates various other issues which present as mental health issues, or mental well-being issues rather. If we do our job well, again, we can reduce the number of people presenting on the health platform with challenges of mental health, because we believe just by running, being involved in a club or various other activities within your community is a way of managing your mental well-being. And that is where most of our work goes into. In the triangle of support that exists within the mental well-being space, DCAS is at the bottom of the triangle, making sure that everyone is aware of their mental health and how to manage their mental health. And then social development is in the middle, and of course health with the health platform is right at the apex. And we are trying to say limit the number of people that end up at the apex, whether wrongfully or rightfully diagnosed. Nobody should be ending up at that level if we do the work that we are required to do and do it well. I'd like to hand over to the CFO, who will then take us through program 1, and then Chair, just so you know, the different program managers are going to start, and then they will hand over to the various directors who will talk to their respective directorates. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. So, and good afternoon again, members, Chair. So I will start off with the performance indicators and targets for program 1. So the first one, annual management improvement plan, and the output indicator, number of plans implemented for improving audit outcomes and reducing the audit findings raised by the Auditor General and internal auditor to achieve service excellence. So this really culminates from the AGS's findings and their recommendations. We then put a report together and it's monitored throughout the financial year to ensure that we implement the recommendations of the AGSA. So that is within the area of financial management. The next 4 indicators is within the area of the Director Strategic and Operational Management Support. The first one being service delivery reports and or charters approved. Number of Batupele documents compiled, that is the output indicators, and their target is 2. Quarterly performance reports, counting the number of quarterly performance monitoring reports compiled, the target is 4 for the year. Quarterly verification reports, number of quarterly verification reports compiled, the target there 4 as well. And then the last one, departmental business continuity plan, which is 1, and this is what we update and review on a very regular basis to ensure that we are ready for any potential disaster that may happen. The next slide is just by way of introducing financial management, which is my area. And our purpose is to render effective financial management services to the department and the 3 public entities. I've got 5 subdirectorates, the first one being the subdirectorate supply chain management. And in the key functions there, so they deal with demand and acquisitions management, they deal with logistics, contract and performance management, asset management, which is a crucial element within financial management. And then we are responsible for the systems control work relating to the LOGA system within that subdirectorate. Then we've got financial accounting, who is responsible mainly, to issue the financial statements at the end of the year, which then culminates from what they do throughout the year, which includes your bookkeeping, your banking, your payments, and then they also manage the BES and partial system. Management accounting, primarily responsible for the budget planning, the MTEF or MTREF planning process. So they also monitor revenue and expenditure throughout the year, and then they are responsible for reviewing and updating the tariff register. We don't have a lot of like a huge revenue stream, but the few that we have to review every year. Then we've got internal control, who is responsible for assurance services, governance, fraud, losses, fraud and losses management, and then risk management facilitation. The function is being executed by the Department of the Premier. Within the departments, we then render the facilitation services where risk management is concerned. Then I've got 3 public entities that I'm responsible for financial management, which includes all of the above that I've mentioned. The only difference between the department and the public entities is their method of accounting or basis of accounting is accrual accounting. They apply what we call the CRAP standards, and they utilize the PASTEL system. Within the department, we use what we call the legacy systems, which is the BES system, and our accounting is based on the modified cash accounting basis, applying the modified cash accounting standards. And then just a brief overview of our budget. So this is the 2024 MTEF. Current financial year, we've got a budget allocation of about 903 million, and that is basically 2% increase from the previous year to the current financial year. For the 25-26 estimate, we are allocated 922 million, which is also about 2% increase year on year. And then the last year, which is the 26-27 financial year, the estimate is 960 million, which is like a 2% increase year on year, equating to 4%. Then just to indicate, conditional grant allocations accounts for about 30% of the department's overall budget. So, and the conditional grants include the Community Library Services grant, and I've just given an indication of the year-on-year budget allocations for the Community Library Services grant. And then we have the Mass Participation and Sport Development grant, and again, I've just provided an indication of the allocation over the MTEF. Then we've got the EPWP integrated grant for provinces, which is about 2.9 million, and that is allocated within Program 2, the museums specifically. And then we have the social sector EPWP incentive grant for provinces, which is allocated within Program 4 to the amount of 3.1 million. And as you can see over the MTEF, the allocation, which includes the estimates, the medium-term estimates, is about 2.7 billion. Then just to give a breakdown in terms of the economic classification, I'm not going to go through the numbers, so you can see the allocation per economic classification. But just to indicate, COE accounts for about 29% of our overall budget. Transfers to municipalities comprise of funding for staff at public libraries to render public library services, and about 95% of the transfers that we do to the municipalities is allocated towards staff, staffing the actual public libraries. Non-profit institutions include funding for sport federations, arts and culture organizations, Western Cape Sport Confederation, MOD program, and then we've got one transfer to the library for the blind. Then the 3 public entities, which we also support, as HOD has indicated, their allocation is sitting within households. And we allocate to the 3 departmental agencies. To the 3 public entities, collectively, we allocated about 1.8 million for the current financial year, and as indicated over the MTEF. In the next slide is just an indication of the Directorate Strategic and Operational Management Support. So, responsible for departmental information management, mainly managing the records within the department. Then there is communication services, who is mainly responsible for the drafting and consultation of the departmental communication plans and protocols. And then they render departmental media liaison and public relations service in consultation with the strategic communication unit, which sits within the department of the Premier. Then they are responsible for stakeholder management and mainly managing relationships with key clients and stakeholders. Go to the next slide. The departmental planning, mainly responsible for proactively facilitating the multi-term planning cycle. So they facilitate like the compilation of the APP, the annual report, and the strategic plan. And then they proactively facilitate departmental Batupele service delivery improvement initiatives. Then they are responsible for corporate services relations management, which is the unit established as a liaison between departments and the Department of the Premier, where the HR functions are centralized. And they are mainly responsible for managing the service level agreement that we have with the CSC. And then lastly, they are responsible for monitoring or performance monitoring and reporting, and really to promote and facilitate departmental performance monitoring, evaluation, review, and reporting. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Ms. Van Wyk. That's going to take us through Program 2. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. Good afternoon, members. So I'm going to take you through Program 2, which is the Arts, Culture and Language program. And then I will come back when I speak about Program 3. So Program 2, its purpose is to provide for the arts, culture, museum, heritage and language-related services to the residents of the Western Cape. We support and we contribute to the cultural development and preservation of our region's rich heritage. So in this, what we do is, and you've heard the head of department spoke about the managed network. We do this through establishing structures, supporting structures, such as organizations, networks, and institutions that are open to all and who work well in advancing the arts in the Western Cape. We have 5 sub-programs within Program 2. The first one is the management, which provides for the strategic support, managerial support to cultural affairs to ensure that all activities are aligned to the overall objectives of the department, as well as to respond to the needs and the priorities that are set. Sub-program 2.2 is arts and culture. And here, this program facilitates the development, the preservation, and the promotion of the arts and culture in the Western Cape. And it aims to create an inclusive, vibrant, effective arts and culture structures, activities, and the environments. We then have sub-program 2.3, which is the museum services, who accelerates the transformation of the Western Cape's heritage by providing museological services. We do have 32 affiliated museums, and my colleague Michael, when it comes to that, he will speak more to that. The museum services also conserve, they develop, they promote the heritage of the province through affiliated museums, directly supporting provincial priorities on heritage preservation and public education. Sub-program 2.4 speaks to heritage and how we support the Heritage Western Cape in identifying, protecting, conserving, managing, and promoting significant heritage resources. This sub-program also facilitates processes related to World Heritage Sites and geographical name standardization, aligning it to both national legislation and provincial heritage management, which leads us to sub-program 2.5 that mainly looks at how do we promote multilingualism in the Western Cape to improve service delivery and accessibility. We promote the development of previously marginalized languages, indigenous languages, and we facilitate the implementation and the monitoring of the Western Cape language policy. It also supports the Western Cape Language Committee in executing its legislative mandate to ensure that language services are aligned and with cultural and social priorities at the provincial level. The next slides provides for the overall indicators that Program 2 are responsible for. Members, you'd see that we do have 15 indicators, of which 2, those that are bold, are national indicators which we support. So this table provides a detailed view of the program's outputs and how they are measured across, you'll see, 2021 over time. And it allows us to track the progress in terms of the objectives and the goals that we have set ourselves. Point in case is, for instance, the community conversations. Here we hold, and it's aimed to foster social interaction in communities, and we have dialogues with communities. Case in point is it's about topics that directly have significant impact on communities. For instance, in Q2, we had a topic that focused on gender-based violence in communities, where we had panels and experts in working with and talking with community on how to look at understanding what happens there, and as well as to propose activities that could help communities to understand the impact that GBV have within their respective communities. So I am going to give over to my colleague, Dr. Themba Mchunu. The doctor is coming. The doctor is coming, members, to take us through basically some of the indicators that you've seen on this table. Thank you, Themba.
Thank you so much, Mpati. Once again, Chair and members. So from the arts and culture section, so this is where basically we are ensuring that the development of all the performing arts as well as visual arts in the province, they are supported, they are nurtured, and they are promoted. So this will include all your arts development, music, literacy, theatre, film and television, but also we've got a program that we do, which is a cultural program initiation, where basically we work together with the Western Cape Provincial Initiation Provincial Committee. And we also, in partnership and support with artists, art organizations, and arts companies through our annual funding that we always advertise, and then we invite companies to apply for funding so that we can support their programs and activities that they do in their respective communities, because we see them as an extension of the work that we do instead of just the organizations that we fund. We also provide support to the Western Cape Cultural Commission, as well as the Western Cape Language Commission. So one of the programs that we do in partnership with also the National Department of Arts and Culture is the Community Arts Centers Network. So this program basically looks at the community art centers that are within the Western Cape. So they vary in their tiers. So you will have those that deal with the emerging talents, and then you've got those that deal with sort of like your professional artists as well. But the most important thing here to note is that from its inception, when it began, we started with quite a small number, but of today, we are sitting with about 52 of those community art centers across the province. And most importantly is that they are all compliant, and they are all capable of delivering the programs that we want in their communities. So some of them don't have facilities and big buildings and so on, but the work they do in communities, either it's in a church hall or it's in a community hall, it's very important. So therefore they are divided according to those tiers. And as a department, we do give them funding support in terms of management, but the larger money comes from national, which therefore support their programs. Thank you. And then in terms of just to go through the customer initiation program, as we know, so this program, obviously, as a department, we ensure that our initiation program in the Western Cape is successful. And we have to also say that with our winter season that has just finished, Chair and the members, we had a very successful one, which we recorded 0 fatalities. And it was through to the number of interventions that we had as a department to ensure that under our slogan, our boys go to the mountain safe, alive, and they come back safe and alive. And we are excited about that. So all we do is just to ensure that we facilitate the resources, as we know, in collaboration with the municipalities in terms of water, health, safety as well. So that's what we do. And I think I'll move over to the next slide. That's okay. And then we have our Western Cape Cultural Commission. Chair indicated that will be joining us, but I think possibly is held up. So this is a WCC. Its mandate is to obviously support and advise the minister in terms of the preservation, promotion, and development of arts culture within the communities. But also one of the biggest things that they do is ensuring that our cultural facilities that DCAS has across the province, it's 7 of them. So they manage those facilities, obviously supported by DCAS, but also what they do is to ensure that the cultural councils from the Khoi and San communities, they are supported. Currently, we boast about 34 registered Khoi and San councils that are supported through the department. And then next, it will be the Western Cape culture. Okay, so these are just pretty much the outcomes and the outputs that I've already spoken to in terms of what the expectations are and the services that they do during the course of the year. And then the language services overview. This is where we ensure that it's part of our job as indicated that the department is Arts, Culture and Languages Unit. So the Language Services Unit, it looks at the promotion of multilingualism in the Western Cape. So it's just to ensure that we promote all the languages within the Western Cape. Not long ago, there was the promulgation of the sign language into law. So Chair and members, for example, as the Western Cape, because we're always ahead of everyone, we have already started rolling out our awareness campaigns in terms of sign language. We started with the project at the Cape Town station, which will be rolling out throughout the province in public spaces. So these are spaces where already there's members of the public, either they are going to work, they are coming from work, or people are going out for shopping and so on and so forth. And that also allows us to ensure that we stretch the limited resources that we have by going into public spaces where people are already there. And just to note also is that when we did the one at the station, we were approached by a number of communities saying, look, I have a child at home that I didn't know how to actually communicate with them. So we procured cards. So it's sort of like the normal cards that you would play games with, but then we've made them in such a way that each card has got sign language that you can learn when you're at home and therefore practice with your children. And they said, look, this is going to help us to now finally communicate with our children that we were not able to do so, which was quite positive. So obviously the Language Services Unit, it is supported by the Western Cape Language Commission, which also ensures that all the work that we have to do in terms of the equal status of the 3 languages that we have now, including sign language, they are well supported, as well as the monitoring and the use of the official languages. As we know, we always translate our documents into the 3 official languages using the Western Cape, but also most importantly, ensuring that they advise the minister and on language matters that in support, also working with the Pan South African Language Board to ensure that everything that we have to do where language promotion, preservation is concerned, it is done in a manner that is according to the Act that we follow. Thank you. So this, once again, is just basically the outcomes, output, and performance indicators and targets that I've sort of spoken to previously, as the members can see there. And that will be it from the Arts, Culture, and Language Services Unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and members. Within Program 2, Cultural Affairs, we've got the directorate that I'm responsible for, which is Museums, Heritage and Geographical Names. Within the museum space, we support 32 affiliated museums. They are supported by our museum service, which consists out of an administrative unit that supplies administrative expertise and financial expertise, and also financial assistance. And then a museological unit that assists with research, exhibitions, and museological services like collection management and that type of thing. The 32 affiliated museums are affiliated to the department in terms of the museums ordinance legislation. There's mainly 3 categories of museums. These are provincial museums, province-aided, and local. The provincial museums, these are owned and operated fully by the department. They include some like Bartholomew Dias Museum, in Mossel Bay, the George Museum, the Medical Museum in Greenpoint as examples, and also Worcester Klein Plaas. Then the province-aided museums, which form the biggest cohort of museums, they 20 in total out of the 32. They aren't owned by the department, but the department supports them with funding, with annual subsidy, and also with the secondment of staff. These are governed by independent governing bodies called Board of Trustees, and we work very closely with them in this managed network model that the HOD has spoken about. And then you have a smaller group of museums called local museums. There's 7 of them, and one of them in particular has been very relevant to the World Heritage Site that was recently declared, which is the Elands Bay Museum. Now, what these museums do, they're obviously responsible for the management and conservation of the collections in their care, but these aren't just physical collections or tangible, these are also intangible collections like people's stories, and it's their responsibility to actively research and also exhibit these exhibitions so that people visiting the museum can learn about the local community and their heritage. These museums also actively have education programs, outreach programs, and public programs that they roll out to also espouse the department's vision to create a socially inclusive, creative, active, and connected Western Cape. The second part of our directorate is the heritage component. Here we have the Heritage Resource Management Services, which provide support to Heritage Western Cape in the form of a transfer payment. Heritage Western Cape is the other entity that is supported by the department, and as the entity is responsible for the management of heritage resources in the province, it is, in terms of legislation, the Provincial Heritage Resources Authority. In terms of the National Heritage Resources Act, it has many responsibilities, but currently the majority of our work goes into the issuing of permits when it comes to buildings that's older than 60 years or provincial heritage sites. Based on the legislation, owners of these properties and developers, they have to apply for permits. Just like you have to apply to the municipality if you have building plans and you want to build a building. If there's a heritage component to it, you submit those plans to Heritage Western Cape, and we make sure that the heritage element is properly conserved and issue the relevant permits for that. And then the third section is the Geographical Names Unit. They support or provide support to the Western Cape Geographical Names Committee. This committee is not an entity, it's a supporting committee in the department, and it provides recommendation and advice to the minister when it comes to the standardization and name change applications for geographical features in the province. Then just to share some wonderful good news that you've seen in the media and that the Minister has referred to is that the Western Cape, Heritage Western Cape, the department, and KwaZulu-Natal and national departments such as DFFE and DSAC, along with many other stakeholders, were involved in a more than a decade-year-long project in getting the serial nomination through and inscribed by the World Heritage Committee for the modern human behavior sites. There are two sites in the Western Cape, as Minister alluded to, the one in Pinnacle Point, Mossel Bay, and the other one, Deep Kloof, close to Elands Bay. And then the third is Sibudu and KZN. These are the three initial sites that has been formed part of the World Heritage Site nomination. We call them the anchor sites, and around these sites there are many other smaller sites that doesn't necessarily form part of the World Heritage Site, but it will form part of the promotion of our cultural heritage within the brand name, the Cradle of Human Culture. There's a route that has been developed in this regard, and we will continue to add to this route and also continue to promote and market it for not just the benefit of heritage conservation, but also the role that it will play in uplifting communities and economic development as well. I see HOD has gone on to the next slide, so it's my cue to speak faster. We've got a couple of key projects that you maybe just want to take note of. The one is the Devolution Museum partnership. This came about through the provincial partnership between the Western Cape and the Shandong province in China. Subsequently, the department has partnered with Hisense to develop a new museum. So we're going to have a 33rd affiliated museum called the Devolution Museum that's going to document, demonstrate, and exhibit the evolution of technology, focusing on television technology and radio technology. And we are expectant that we will be able to open this around about October, November this year. Then I did speak about the World Heritage Site already. The third focus or the third key project for us is the revitalization project within our museums and also HWC. This includes, for example, we recently launched the Cape Town Museum Walk-in Centre. This includes the revitalization and reconceptualization of museum exhibitions at Bartholomew Dias Museum in Worcester and some of our other affiliated museums. And to make heritage sites more accessible, we are launching a series of QR codes. So along with the plaque that HWC places on provincial heritage sites, we now put a QR code that you can scan to access the heritage and the historical significance of that site. And then as part of HWC's commitment to build more efficient systems, we very much understand that we play a big role in the value chain when it comes to not just heritage conservation, but also economic development in the province. And although we want to protect heritage in the province because we understand it as a heritage resource that can significantly contribute to economic development, we also don't want to be an obstacle to development when it comes to the processes that developers and property owners have to go through in order to get their permits. So we sent the entire team on the lean management course with UCT, and they've documented the permit application process from beginning to end. I think the biggest victory for us was the mind shift in the team here, because the team works in such a litigious environment. The processes that we have to follow is very much prescribed by the legislation, and so it's very easy to get into a zone where you think, you know, there isn't further efficiencies to be gained because there's timeframes and things connected to this. But once you actually plot it scientifically and through the lean management method, you come to see where the areas are that you can improve and gain efficiencies, and we've seen significant progress with that as well. Then these couple of slides are just to show you how we align with the provincial priorities. Within the Heritage Resource Management Services, we fall here within well-being. And we've identified 3 focus areas that we want to focus on to better deliver our services to the citizen. The first one is to clarify the scope and role of HRMS, because there is this awkward grey space between what the Heritage Resource Management Services does and what HWC does, and we're busy just clarifying that. We have some capacity within HRMS that we would like to strengthen, and we're busy plotting this new direction for the Heritage Resource Management team that focuses very much on the vision to transform the heritage landscape. Then on the museum side, our service delivery improvement roadmap have 8 focus areas that we're focusing on. The biggest one there is the visitor experience and expanding the footprint and decolonialization of exhibitions. We're taking the team and the affiliated museums through a process where you must be very mindful of when a visitor comes to the museum, what is the experience that they have from beginning to end through the entire value chain, from getting to reception to exiting the museum and then going to your local restaurant and getting some lunch and that type of thing. And so we're busy with that process. There are the other focus areas like leveraging partnerships, reviewing the governing body process and the type of support that we provide to our affiliated museums. And then there's also areas within governance, staff capacity collections, and marketing and repackaging of museums that is receiving attention by us internally. Now, from HWC's point of view, we've got 3 key focus areas. The first one is to improve resource capacity. The second is to promote heritage values. And the third is to increase efficiency. Over the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of our effort within the improved resource capacity and the increased efficiency part, as I referred to earlier with the lean management. We are also almost there with the full automation of the application process, where we will be utilizing the national system from SARA called SARAS. But in line with our ministerial priority to focus on the promotion of heritage. Our second key focus area there is on the promotion of heritage values. And here we'll be focusing on developing a comprehensive marketing and communication strategy, focus on better quality digital content and outreach programs to inform the public, developers, and all our stakeholders about the value of proper heritage resource management in the province. And then the last two slides, these are just the annual performance plan targets for Heritage Western Cape. I don't think I necessarily need to go into all of these ones. I would just like to highlight one, which is the 1.3, which is about the schedule of meetings. Now, HWC Council has subcommittees that look at all the applications that HWC gets. And this is where the majority of our work goes. And unfortunately, in terms of the legislation, there's three categories of heritage resources. There's grade 1, 2, and 3. Grade 1 being national resources, which falls outside of the jurisdiction of HWC. And then there's grade 2, which is of provincial significance, and 3 of local significance. Now, HWC need to primarily spend its time and resource allocation on grade 2, which is resources of provincial heritage significance, but currently the majority of our time and resources are spent in processing applications revolving grade 3 resources, which is of local significance. The legislation provides that these can be processed by local authorities such as municipalities, which makes a lot of not just sense in a heritage management point of view, but also from a development and economic point of view. You can just imagine that you as a developer or property owner, you now have your building plans and you want to submit it to the municipality. You go there and then they tell you, no, there's a heritage component to it, and now you've got to come to Heritage Western Cape and go through Heritage Western Cape's processes and then go back to the municipality. So it's multiple institutions that you have to go to, where if we can successfully integrate this with the local authorities, it'll become a one-stop shop at municipalities. And we have been working very hard, especially with the City of Cape Town and the Drakensberg municipality. They have been declared competent, and we've developed a set of strategies in order for them to officially be delegated this responsibility. We're not quite there yet, but we are cautiously optimistic about the future in getting there. And I think that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So it's back to me. I will be taking the members through Program 3, which is basically responsible to provide a comprehensive library and archive services in the Western Cape. So Program 3, the work is basically multifaceted and focuses, as I've mentioned, on the preservation, the organization, accessibility of knowledge and information and services to our residents of the Western Cape through our government departments and the likes. We have 3 sub-programs in this program, of which the first one is the management sub-program, who are responsible for the management support and oversight of library services, as well as provincial archive services and enterprise content management, the directorates there. Sub-program 3.2 is responsible for library services for the Western Cape. It provides library services as per the legislation and constitutional mandates in the Western Cape. We've got over 376 libraries in the Western Cape. And it's quite a big footprint, which my colleague Cecilia will speak to when I hand over to her. Sub-program 3 focuses on archive services, and these services provide for records and archive services management through for the Western Cape in terms of its various departments, government departments, as well as governmental bodies. And it also supports the electronic content management, which is the Western Cape's record management system, to make sure that our governance, everything that we do is recorded, as well as in terms of through the archive services also protecting and preserving our cultural heritage in that aspect. The next slide basically also looks at our outcomes and our outputs and our performance indicators. So for Program 3, we have 23 indicators for the year, of which 4 are national indicators. For instance, if one look at the indicator for the number of public awareness programs conducted about archival services, here is basically where the archives basically go out and educate and inform the broader public, as well as government departments and governmental bodies on the importance of archive and records management for posterity in the Western Cape. So I'm going to hand over to Cecilia, who will take us through some of the indicators and the outputs for libraries. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. I'm very excited to tell you about the best public library service in South Africa. So just to give you our objectives, it's on the screen. The reason we are here is to give everyone a free, equitable and accessible access to library and information services. We are here to provide for the information, reading and learning needs of all people within the Western Cape and to promote a culture of reading, library usage and lifelong learning. And just to give a little bit of sense of what we do as a department, is our role is to provide the funding and then the monitoring and oversight of the use of that funding. We're responsible for collection development, so we would do the selection, procurement, preparation of the books and send it to the public libraries. We're the ones that provide the e-books and the audiobooks to the public libraries. We provide the internet access at rural libraries, so the equipment and the actual internet. We do skills development and training with our public librarians, and then obviously the policy and legislation guidelines as well. So we are the biggest public library footprint in the country. And what this means is that we have a reach in almost every community. So a couple of weeks ago in the Drakensberg area, they were sending us photos of how people were standing outside the library, queuing up to register their kids for school, because that's that time of the year again. Or in communities where the police stations are maybe not working like they should. Our librarians are actually doing the certification of documents. So we are one of the few departments that have such a broad footprint in communities, and we encourage the other departments to work for us, with the public. So we can go to the next slide. So currently we are busy with one of our ministerial priorities, which is to reimagine the public library service development model. So, as you know, or would have noticed if you visited our public libraries, the role of public libraries have long shifted from facilities mainly focused on lending of books, but we now community hubs. We facilitate cultural awareness. We provide access to local and community information, governance, primary and generally health information, and educational opportunities. A lot of people come to our libraries to use our internet access, to look for jobs, to do their online exams, to do their research, to do their projects. We also provide the citizen support functions, such as helping older people to register for vaccines or SASSA grants or UIF or school legislation. So currently we are looking at repurposing our library spaces. We want to become multi-purpose centers. So we are working with our community arts centers to bring the arts into the libraries. We have the Almal hubs that Minister was talking about, which is museums and arts exhibition in libraries, working with archives and languages. We are looking at how private sector can make use of our public library spaces. Libraries are becoming spaces where people can provide poetry recitals, music and theatre. And then we're working with the CEI, not the CIA, very closely.
As the chair, I just want everyone to be clear. That's what she said.
CEI, yes. Yeah. So we're repurposing our spaces into digital spaces, digital hubs, where the community can come. We give them training, digital literacy, and so on. And then we're also doing the digital integration of ebooks and audiobooks. So the journey that we've
we've started with this new reimagining of our library service actually started in 2023 when we partnered with the University of Cape Town, the design school. We used their honour students as a project at the Wellington Library to look at how can we bring youth back into the library. So the design students then took on the challenge and they came up with very useful suggestions. And we then decided, let's use the design school methodology and the facilitators to help us actually develop a new, better service delivery model. So in February, we had this think tank conference with the National Librarian, with experts from all over the country to start talking about how can we repurpose our libraries, reimagine our libraries. And we are at the process now of lots of research and workshops and design teams working together of bringing a document together, which we hopefully will have the concept document now in this month, next month, September. Okay. Then the next slide. Our very important work we're currently working on in the public library sector is our legislation and assignment. We have provincial legislation, which is now it's out for comment. We are meeting with the municipalities to take them through the legislation so that we can formally assign the service to municipalities. So nothing will change in the way that we work. It's just formalizing how we work. So we're partially assigning those services that they are already doing in municipalities. We're legalizing it. So we will continue providing the support, the books, the infrastructure, all of that, and they'll do the front through assignment. We are focusing on working closer with the WCED, the Education Department, since the literacy is such a big problem within our country. We're trying to get every school child to become a library member. We work very closely with WCED. We even have 34 dual-purpose libraries in the province, which means that it's a library that's on a school space, but it's open for the public as well. So it serves a dual purpose of community library as well as a school library, and we're trying to expand that. Also working closely with social development with outreach programs to ECDs and old age homes. We have we provide the internet access to the rural libraries. Metro provides it to the City of Cape Town libraries. So we have 232 libraries that have public library internet access through about 1,500 workstations. Currently, with the assistance of CEI, we have 181 public libraries that also gives Wi-Fi to the broader community around them. So the Wi-Fi gives access outside the public library. We're engaging with them through this new broadband 2.0 to have more Wi-Fis inside and outside the libraries. And then we're working on getting a new library and information management system that will allow the better management of the whole process from procurement up to when the public searches for a book. They have one search engine that will find a book in a library or online book. It would create a better digital experience for everyone. Just before I end, I did want to say, and I said to the Minister as well when we had our engagement with him, we have an excellent working relationship with local government. We are the one space where we don't see provincial versus local. We are a public library sector and we work together to provide the best public library service we can for this province. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members, once again. I don't think I'll have the energy like my colleague who just spoke. I'm responsible for the Provincial Archives and Records Service. I think the first slide that we normally have is this definition of the archives. It was agreed upon in the UNESCO General Conference in November 2011, where they are trying to create an understanding and awareness of archives by the public and decision makers. Archives record decisions, actions, and memories. Archives are a unique and irreplaceable heritage passed from one generation to another. Archives are managed from creation to preserve their value and meaning. When we say creation, in terms of our responsibility, we are also responsible for records management. So when records are created in governmental bodies, that's where our work starts. and that the creation of records is underpinned by some key aspects, which include, for example, authenticity, reliability, integrity, usability, accountability, and transparency. That's why they are regarded as authoritative sources of information underpinning accountable and transparent administrative actions. They play an essential role in the development of societies by safeguarding and contributing to individual and community memory. Open access to archives enriches our knowledge of human society, promotes democracy, protect citizens' rights, and enhance quality of life. In the archives, 72 Roland Street, that is where we have the access to our archival records. We receive a lot of people looking for different information, again, to confirm their rights and in terms of what is available and from those authoritative records. In terms of the objectives of the Archives and Records Service, the service itself is in Schedule 5A of the Constitution. Archives other than National Archives are an exclusive provincial legislative competence. And we also have the legislation as the province, the Provincial Archives and Records Service of the Western Cape Act, number 3 of 2005. So our objectives are aligned to the legislation. It is to provide for a Provincial Archives and Records Service for the province of the Western Cape. And in this regard, we have a responsibility as the custodians of the archival heritage and also the responsibility in terms of records management and an oversight role in terms of this records management. Our clients in the province, we've got the 65 what we call governmental bodies. That includes the 13 Western Cape government departments, the 10 ministries, the provincial parliament, the office of the premier, the 30 municipalities, and the 10 public entities. So those are our clients that we engage on a daily basis almost in terms of records management and archiving. Our function or our objective is also to provide for proper management and care of public records in the province of the Western Cape. Also to provide for the preservation and the use of these provincial archival heritage. That's where we provide access in Roland Street. Okay, we've got two legs of our services. We've got the, I'll start with the one on the right, which is records management, because that's where it starts. What we do in records management with all the 65 bodies that I just mentioned, we look at their classification systems, the file reference numbers, in terms of how their records should be managed. And then we also look into capacity building and inspections where we do train the records managers and registry clerks. We also do inspections of the records just to see whether they are complying with the Act, because there are a lot of responsibilities in the Act, including the responsibilities of the accounting officers. We also have the administrative support. And in terms of records, we also deal with both paper-based and electronic records. In terms of electronic records, the systems that are used for electronic document and records management, we have to approve them as archives. That is also in the legislation. Then on the archives management side, the collection management, that is where we receive collections. The first line, which is appraisal, the records are looked into in terms of their importance, historical importance, the importance in terms of the institution or the organization that they are created. And then from there, there are records that are given what we call an A20 symbol, which means these records need to be transferred to the archives after they are 20 years old. Then at 20 years, they then get transferred to the archives. That's where collections management starts. We then receive these transfers from the governmental bodies, and then we process them so that they are available to the public through various systems, which I'll touch on later on. And then the preservation side of records, because we keep records, our oldest record that we have is 1651. So these records need to be kept in such a way that they are used for generations to come, for hundreds of years to come. So there are also processes that we follow in terms of making sure that they are preserved. Also, the building needs to be in such a way that the condition allows for that. Then we started with a digitization program in 2014 where we are digitizing these archival records so that we make them available to the broader public, because our researchers are not only Western Cape based. We have researchers all over the world, basically. So then we're trying to make these records accessible to them, also to save them, because the physical handling also make them deteriorate. And then we've got the client services. That is where the broader public walks in. They don't have to make up an appointment. They just go in to our services, and then they will be helped to look through the records. In terms of ministerial priorities, our alignment in preserving the rich tapestry of collective history and identity, I think there we are also emphasizing the role of archives in cultural heritage, the fact that they hold valuable records of the past, including historical documents, the photographs, the oral histories, and then the preservation of touch on it. One of the things that we are doing, Carol mentioned, in terms of the awareness programs, we also do awareness programs, and we're also targeting the youth. So we've got a lot of programs that we do with schools in collaboration with the Western Cape Department of Education. They also come to the archives. We take them through what we have in the archives. We do presentations. We have the programs like Archives Week that we have every May of the year. And then access to information, we provide access to the wealth of information that we have. Again, we want to empower youth so that they know about their heritage, legal rights, and also the importance of record keeping. And in terms of heritage, also one of the interesting, or people that are interested in our workshop is on genealogy or family history. A lot of people do attend that because they then find their family history through our records. Inspiring future archivists, we also want to engage with youth so that they know, like, archives is not just about the old records. There's also a lot of other interesting things that they can learn about that will be of interest to them. And also in involvement of youth in general in terms of understanding being also active citizenship. Maybe we can move. Innovation, governance and culture, our linkage also to the provincial strategies. I've mentioned the issue of digitization, that we've been doing the program for some time. We are continuing with that. We also have systems. One of the systems that we have is what is called access to memory, and this is the system that it's where we explain what collection we have. So that then they create a reference number so that a user can be able to go into the system and be able to search, and then the reference numbers will come up, and also from our side when we search for users. Then there's a system called National Automated Archival Information Retrieval System. This is a database. We are still linked very much so to the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, the National Department, because in their legislation, all provinces need to deposit their information into this national database so that one can just see that what is currently available in the country in terms of archival records. So then there are codes that are used for different provinces. And also if somebody, for example, come to our archives, which we've done several times looking for information on traditional leadership, maybe from the Eastern Cape, we are able to go to the system and see, okay, these records are here in rural street, but there are records that are in national archives. Then we'll request from there, and there are records that are in Eastern Cape. Then we can request for a person while the person is sitting here in Cape Town, and then they can then conclude the whole research that they are busy with. The enterprise content management is a system that also is Carol mentioned. This is our approved electronic records management system for the 13 Western Cape government departments at the moment. So they then use it for what we call born digital records. That is a record that has been created electronically, that has not been printed in the process. All the signatures up until the last person that is to give approval has done it through electronic system. Then the implementation of virtual tours, we are busy with a process where we would want people to, from the comfort of their homes, to sort of like view the archives or visit the archives. And we also hoping to create awareness and also more interest on the archives and also for the young people and other people that might not necessarily be able to visit Cape Town specifically. One of the other things that we are busy with as the department is the implementation of the archives website. Currently, we are part of the bigger website of the Western Cape government, the DCAS, and then but you take so many steps to reach us. But because we have people that are all over the world that sometimes they don't know which department the archives fall under. So we'd like to have a website where you just go in one step, and the second step, you're already in the collections platform where you then start your search without maybe jumping 5 steps to get through that. Okay, for the next month, the 4th to the 6th of September, we are going to hold a records management symposium. This symposium is meant to also enhance the good governance, transparency, and accountability. And so we have invited accounting officers of all our 65 governmental bodies that I've mentioned, the records managers, the researchers, private sector representatives, and experts in the field of records management, where we are going to discuss the importance of records management. Part of the, in the first day, the first day is the one that is targeting the accounting officers. We've got the Office of the Information Regulator doing a presentation on the link between protection of personal information and records management. We've got Auditor General of South Africa doing a presentation. We have also our own legal services taking the accounting officers through, more like as a reminder in terms of what the Act says about the role in terms of records management. So we're looking forward now to that 3 days where we are going to engage and once again try to ensure that there's proper management and care of records in the province. I think that's the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomaza. Thank you, Chair. Just before we give over to Dr. Lyndon Bauer, I'd just like to introduce Ms. Rihanna Ghani. She's the Chair of the Heritage Western Cape, and she has joined us in the meeting. Thank you. Over to you, Lyndon.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. So I'm going to be doing program 4, which is consists of sport promotion and recreation. And what we're going to do today is just to look at between Daniel, Jackie, Tabo, and myself. Each one will give a slide or two. So essentially, sport and recreation. First, it consists of recreation because we believe that the fundamental start for all sport is recreation and play. So you'll hear about our ECDs. Thereafter, we have the child going to school, and then at the school sport is one of the issues that we want to re-energize, revitalize, and start again, as Minister correctly indicated. And then we will also hear from Daniel in terms of what we are doing with our after-school program with the MOD in particular, and then Jackie will also give an input later on our after-school program and the youth. As HOD mentioned, the after-school and youth reports to him directly. Tabo will just do a short synopsis on our club development program with 1 or 2 photographs and what it actually means. We will highlight client and scientific support as well, and then infrastructure, research, and event support. So these are the main things. And HOD, as you go to the next slide, these are our indicators. So we've got 24 indicators within our equitable share that looks at all of this. We also have the ones in bold are from National. So National has asked us to also put indicators in. CFO has mentioned earlier that we receive the conditional grant. The conditional grant varies between 65 and 68 million rand each year. Depends if there's a budget cut, if we get more or less. And last year, some of our programs also got cut, like our youth camps got cut by 3 million rand. And so forth. So each year depends what the Treasury allows in terms of our conditional grant. I'm not going to go through each one of these, Chair, but the key thing is to note that all the ones that I've mentioned earlier is covered in our indicators, and by and large we make each of the indicators each year unless there's a specific reason why something could not happen because it got cancelled. Last year, for instance, Chair, we We had the National Indigenous Game. This year, because of the budget cuts last year, our Indigenous Games only goes to provincial level. So therefore, in terms of the winter games that we used to have over the last 10 years, there's no longer winter games. Those have also now, summer and winter is now one national championship. So there's a number of these things that Daniel and the others will speak about, but the key thing is that our indicators traverse all 6 districts of the Western Cape. So the 5 districts plus the metro, most of the things that we do have to be replicated times 6, and in some instances also times 7 when we have a provincial championship. So for us to send schools, athletes or any other person on trials, you have district trials, and then you have to have the provincial trials as well. So you can imagine there would be expenditure times 6 or times 7 depending on what we do. Thanks, HOD. Then the next aspect we're going to look at is sport promotion. So we'll jump to club development, and Tabu will talk to the pitches and just highlight some of the aspects. Tabu, Tutu, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Power. Afternoon again, Chair and members. If you look at the picture on the left, through the club development, let me sketch first how club development works. Club development we facilitate it through sport federations in the Western Cape. Clubs would then apply within their sport federation, and then those clubs will be then nominated into the program, and the clubs are inducted into the program. And for this year, we've got 200 clubs across the 16 priority codes. And the clubs are in the club development program for a period of 3 years. We help them with transport, we help them with capacity building, equipment and attire, and also with registration fees. In the last year, we have supported 25 leagues throughout the province. We also assisted 200 clubs with equipment and attire at the picture below there. And then we've also assisted them with education and training for the 200 clubs. We've also helped 40 athletes to access international competitions, which are supported by SASCOC. We give them an ad hoc funding at 10,000 per athlete that goes to compete overseas. It's a contribution that we make. We have also helped disability sport with 4 interventions in the last year, and through the academy program that we have, that also helps with high performance athletes. We have academies in each district in the province that we help athletes with. And within the client support space, we work with all sport federations in the Western Cape. In the last financial year, I think we funded 131 sport federations. We help them with development, with capacity building, with major events, and also transformation projects. Yeah, I think I will end there. Thank you, Chair and members.
And next slide will be taken by Daniel.
Good afternoon, everybody. So this section of the department is called Joy and Happiness. So it's all about sports development. So it starts with a recreational program. So you've got to picture this. It's a community municipal facility. In that facility, you have a coach. It's resourced with equipment, and it's providing recreational facilities to all the ECDs in the area, and then also to the elderly. So this is a safe space where citizens come and they participate in recreational activity. So it's exercise sports, but it's also fitness training and learning new sports codes. So the recreational program also promotes indigenous games, so the games we grew up playing, drie stokkies, etc., etc. And with that, it allows for intergenerational conversation and handover of our heritage. The recreational program also runs district youth camps, where young leaders are selected from our programs. We put them through an intensive youth camp that we do at a district level, and then we mentor them for 3 years going forward. So the 3 years mentorship is where they become part of a community of young leaders, and they actually also support our coaches in implementing the programs on the ground. At your rec centres, we'll also host community festivals, which creates an opportunity to build social cohesion, where the elderly will sell kusistas and pet cook and so forth, but loads of opportunity just for social cohesion and everybody participating in fun and recreation. So what's important about recreation, it's not necessarily about competition, but it's about introducing, I choose to be active. It's about making the choice to lead a healthy lifestyle. And HOD is now rushing me and taking me to the next slide and saying, Danielle, don't worry, it's there. I choose to be active. So it's creating the opportunity for a citizen to choose an active lifestyle. There's a safe space, you can go, the elderly, they've also started a dating club there where seniors, their partners have passed on, but they're now connecting and building new relationships and social cohesion. So choosing to be active, and then also the indigenous games, that's part of our heritage. Drie stokkies, the spear fighting there, you'll see there. I don't know what the guy in the middle's playing. What's he playing? Yitske, right? So all these traditional games that allow for storytelling, that's important. And that happens at a district level, and it culminates at a big provincial level. So you'll find diverse communities coming together and learning about each other's traditional games. So if we go on to the next slide, we noticed that one of the minister's priorities are around school sports. So organized school sports, organized leagues, where we want each school to be participating in 2 codes, 2 winter codes, 2 summer codes, 2 age groups and genders, girls and boys, where we know that tomorrow I'm playing Livingston High, I'm playing Maritzburg High, there's that competition, we can look forward to it, right? So from that competition, we move on to district championships, provincial championships, and eventually the Olympics, just like you've experienced. So providing the structure in the league to identify talented athletes and creating the pathway for them to progress. So the picture you see is the Western Province there bringing home gold. So this is where the competition comes in, Western Cape. But very importantly, the success of the school sports program is dependent on partnerships with education. So getting school A playing against school B, and also dependent on federations and how well they function and support the school leagues. But we're very excited about taking it to 100% participation with the 5-year plan, strong partnership agreement with education, and a strategy to achieve that. What's also important, the Deputy Director responsible for school sports is very passionate about including learners with disabilities, special needs as well. So in order to achieve the objective of 100% participation, all learners having the opportunity to participate in school sports, it's the governance with education that is strong, improving that, the governance with federations that needs to be there, and of course the infrastructure, right? So during winter, many of the leagues couldn't take place because sports fields were waterlogged, right? So how do we ensure that we've got the sports infrastructure for the leagues to take place? And there it's the network model, partnerships with municipalities, access to their facilities, and utilizing our shared facilities. Equipment and attire must be there, and of course capacitating our coaches, and then implementing the leagues, and then bringing home gold from national championships and from the Olympics. So that's the school sports strategy with 6-8 points. And my chief wants to add?
So, Chair, just before we go on this slide that HOD is showing, the feds there is federations, not FBI.
Colleagues, please note that carefully. We don't want problems after this meeting.
Okay, then after school sports, what underpins that? So school sports is the elite, it's the competition. But before that, you have recreation and you've got the after school program. So the after school program is a safe space at the school where learners just come and play, right? It's modified sports. We start to identify talent, but here it's all about leading a physical, healthy lifestyle, right? So it's a safe space with a caring and competent coach, with equipment, and the changes that we start to see in the learners is that they feel safe in the space, they become more confident with their physical literacy, they throw the ball further each week, and so their mindset starts to change. I start to show up at school, my academic, performance improves, team participation, etc., etc. So all we're doing is providing a safe space with the coach and with the resources, and we're seeing all of those changes. And the priorities around this program, after school program, is the partnership with education, it's marketing the program, but also what's very important in all of our programs is the coach. So with quality coaches, we have quality programs. So through the programs, we're creating job opportunities for people who generally are not highly skilled. So they have matric and they have an interest in sports. They come into the program, we build their capacity to become accredited coaches, to enter into the event space. So the coach is a big ingredient of a successful program. And then, of course, looking at rewarding programs, etc. But as the HOD moves to the next slide, what's important around expanding the footprint of the program is the managed network model. So working in partnerships with NGOs, with Northlink College, etc. So Northlink College will be taking on hosting 60 of their students who have studied sports management and placing them in our programs. The HOD spoke about mental health being important through a partnership with Waves for Change and the Department of Health. We've trained our coaches in identifying the red flags with mental health. So you're not a mental health practitioner, you're not a counselor, but you're noticing when little Pitty hasn't come to training for 3 days, he's losing a bit of weight, let me make the right referral. So partnerships are very important, which will allow us to do impact assessments, training, etc., etc. And I'll hand over to my wonderful colleague, Jackie Bull. And she's not a bull.
Thank you very much, and afternoon again, members. So if we were a room of young people, only this little group of us here would have a job. So focusing on youth is absolutely key. And the Western Cape government is the only provincial government which has seriously invested in youth service in the country. So I was in the National Steering Committee meeting yesterday, and they noted that the Western Cape government provincial government is the only one that has really invested in youth service. So we run a program that was started here but is now run also in the Eastern Cape and soon will be run in Gauteng called Year Beyond. And it is a mass participation youth service program to get every young person under the age of 25 active in their communities. While they're active in their communities and building strong foundations to close the inequality gap, at the same time, they are addressing their own development and stepping onto a bridge which unlocks their future. It's about being socially active. We've just done a study, and it found that participants in the program were 45% more likely than their peers nationally and 50% more likely than their peers in the Western Cape to continue to be active in their communities, volunteering and doing community work. So we're building a socially active youth cohort, which of course means we're building the future. So our dream is to have every public space with young people in it, bringing it alive. We currently have people working in the libraries, we have people working in schools, we have people working in community hubs and police stations and clinics. But imagine that every space had young people in it, bringing it alive. It brings feet into those spaces. It gives those young people a sense of purpose, and it addresses some of the gaps. So in terms of the program is a once-off. It's not a job. It's a giving service to your community and stepping onto the bridge. And the bridge into the economy is really an opportunity for you to learn and grow as a young person. So you come onto the bridge, we build your professionalism, emotional intelligence, and agency skills, and then we help you pathway into either study, work, or entrepreneurship. And we help you to take that next step. 70% of the participants in the program are over the last 10 years, we turned 10 this year, have continued to be economically active after leaving the program, compared to the 30% who would, of that cohort, who would be economically active. And so I think very important in terms of that, it's bringing down NEETs. We have about a 10% impact on NEETs, so we reduce NEETs by about 10%. And we can also leverage other government programs for those that aren't able to launch themselves after that year. Onto the next slide. Yeah, that's the 70%. And then just to say that in terms of the program, we focus on the generic work skills, which are often referred to as soft skills, but they're actually hard skills. But it's around the what industry's needing from young people, what young people need if they're going to go into their own business. About 17% of our youth start their own business and make an income from their own business, and about half of them employ other young people or other people in their community. I think what we're continually doing is engaging with partners in the private sector to work out what they are looking for from young people, and then iterating the training. All the young people get a mentor, and their mentor helps curate the journey for them in terms of what they go through and what they learn. And then I think very important is this ecosystem of pathways. We know that half of young people who are graduates get their first job through a personal contact, not through applying for a job. If you only have a matric, that increases to 80%. So if you have no networks of people who work, you never really are able to step out and into the economy. So a lot of what we're doing is connecting people, and we do that through our partnerships with the private sector and with places of study, and then with other government programs and departments. So I think in terms of that, just moving on to the impact, because we 10 this year, so we have about 4,000 young people a year going through the program. We've had 12,000 to date, because it's only really in the last 3 years with money from the National Youth Service that we've been able to scale to the extent we do. We pay about 100 million rand in allowances to young people per annum. Collectively, it's about 220. They're 50% more likely to volunteer.
Just hang on for a second, member.
Yeah. The problem is not with the hair, probably with the machine. Can that be fixed? It was making an irritating noise.
Yeah, the protocol officer is busy checking that as well. You might just need to change microphones.
Sorry?
Better?
No, it's fine. Can you hear me if I stand there? So I think the key thing is, in terms of it, is the impact going over the 10 years, and I think it's really impacting young people, but they in turn work with, on average, about 50,000 parents and children, and so the impact is much wider than the young people on the program. And you'll see there a picture from the Go Beyond conference, which we've just had. It is the largest youth conference in South Africa, and we have about 1,200 young people at UWC really thinking about shaping their futures and going beyond. And I think that that is it on Year Beyond. Then just to say very briefly, as HOD mentioned, we also have the Youth Forum that we convene for the whole of Western Cape Government, and we have a whole of society youth forum as well. That really is to build a community of practice across all the programs working with young people, and to share ideas and to collaborate and share resources, but also very importantly to start driving impact, because if we look at how much money is spent on youth, it doesn't match the impact of what's happening. So a lot of what we're wanting to do is to look at how we help programs to become more impactful. And in terms of that, we've developed some norms and standards. We've assessed all programs against those norms and standards, and now we're really working on aligning all programs with those norms and standards. So you really get that 1 + 1 = 3, and this province can really start denting that youth unemployment stat. Thank you.
Colleagues, that's the presentation. We I considered at one stage cutting the presentation short, but there's rich content that you presented. I think it's important that conceptually we get what the various, call it components of this department does. We might run into a time limitation. At the same time, I don't want to limit questions. I want everyone to understand one another here. So I suggest a quick coffee break, right, for everyone to recharge themselves. We might go a little bit then beyond the time as this committee. I think the rest of our committee business, I think, is fairly straightforward. That won't take too much time. So colleagues, let's take a 10-minute coffee break. Then there will be another hour that I will give for questions and follow-up questions. After that, of course, the committee will proceed with its own work. Thanks.
services in the Cape. Are there libraries in the province who currently don't have Wi-Fi? Which are those libraries in which areas, and what is the reason for that? And then in terms of museums, Chairperson, last year the Premier promised to turn the Robbie Neurock Clinic into a shelter for homeless people. Then there was a sudden U-turn, and it was said that it's going to be turned into a museum. I just wanted to check what prompted this department to all of a sudden be interested in using this building for a museum? And then does that now mean that the asbestos will be removed, or will it remain? If I can just get clarity on that. And then lastly, in terms of funding, is there any report as to how many young boys and girls from underprivileged communities specifically have the department funded for the period of 2019 to 2024 in terms of sports? And when I speak about programs, I'm referring to bursaries or study opportunities to gain skills in the sports sector, or even funds towards international trips, among others. And how many were girls and how many were boys? If there's a report available for this, please. Thank you.
Member van Manen.
Thank you very much. I want to touch very much on libraries. I was the only English-speaking kid as a small child living in a very, very Afrikaans town in the Boerland. And the library was literally my lifeline. I could read, and it was my friend. It was everything to me. So I really, really feel very, very strongly about libraries. What I want to know is essentially, in terms of the assignment to the city, I was a city councillor for a number of years, and it was always seen as an unfunded mandate. Can we be sure that there will be finances for libraries, and that we're not going to see in the non-metros, in the smaller towns and the villages where we really need library services, that we're going to see a curtailment of libraries? Because it's really, really important to make sure that we retain those resources in the small towns and villages where people really do need access. Libraries provide an amazing service, not just in terms of books, but in terms of being a safe space, in terms of being, as the Minister said, community spaces, in terms of giving access to the internet, job opportunities, all sorts of things. And along that line, it's not really a question as much as a comment. So in certain jurisdictions, particularly, as always, in Scandinavia and Denmark, they have human libraries. And looking at what was being said about heritage, about memory, about trying to retain diversity and history, is it not something that one can consider in the Western Cape, particularly in areas where you really have small minorities with languages that are disappearing at a huge rate because of the push towards languages like English, that one has communities that are really fading very fast. A colleague of mine in Parliament, her mother tongue is Nama, she's from the Northern Cape, which I find quite amazing because one doesn't meet people like that very often who have the old Indigenous languages as mother tongue languages. So isn't there a space in libraries to also look at the human resources that we have in our communities? Then in terms of heritage, something else that I feel quite strongly about, but the unintended consequence of heritage, very often, I found this when I was a ward councillor, is that a building will be declared a heritage building. So people are not able to easily then convert it to modern usage, and they don't want to actually have the expense of doing so. So what they tend to do is they just leave it and becomes a problem building, and eventually it falls down. Now, that is obviously not the intention of what heritage is about. How can one go about dealing with that situation where sometimes a heritage status being conferred on a building results in willful negligence? So one really needs teeth in that department to ensure that people maintain those buildings. And in particular in that space, I want to touch on the issue of public works, national public works. There are any number of national public works buildings that have heritage protection, but are essentially just being allowed to fall into wreck and ruin. And that is everybody's loss. How does one deal with that situation? Thank you.
Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. And Chairperson, I'm glad that you did not cut the presentation short, because everything we've heard was just music, music, music to our ears. And Chairperson, based on my background, being a former mayor and being involved in the municipality, I come from Garden Route, being involved in sponsorships to clubs, etc. And there was always something that we could never resolve, and that is sponsorship to the clubs versus the umbrella bodies. You give it to the umbrella body, then the clubs say they don't see the money. You give it to the clubs, and the umbrella body said that they are abusing the system. So I don't know the department, how the department deals with those kind of requests at this stage. And then also, it's a matter of me being in this position now because the community are going to continue to raise these things. Being from a rural area, they give you a letter in your hand as a request for sponsorship, whether it's a club or whether it's a cultural thing. How do we deal with that? And and how can they access the assistance from a grassroots level up to the level of the province? And what criteria should they follow so that we can have those answers for the people who will continue to come to us? And then secondly, Chairperson, it's regarding initiation schools. I'm aware that in Beto, there is some committee that works with the department or whatever committee, I don't know what it's called, but there was an incident past June. The doctors had to amputate. That has probably not been communicated because, no, this year, one of the initiates had to be amputated, and that has caused the elders to stand up. Now there's, through you, Chairperson Minister, there's a religious fraternal. They then came together. They sat with that committee, and I've been briefed, hence me now raising this. They sat with that committee, and they've decided between the existing committee and the religious fraternal, who now also wants to be part of this. And there's a pastor, he has a farm, and he has availed a portion of his farm for a semi-professional initiation school to happen on his farm. And they're now busy clearing aliens, etc., because they want that now to be a central point where, I don't know what it's called, probably a traditional practitioner will be on site 24/7. They're going to rotate each other. And they've been referred to a Clement Williams. I don't know, in the system, yeah. They've been referred to Clement Williams, and they've been asking me where I've met Clement Williams, and I said, I will know him after today. You know, so it's just for an answer, Chairperson, on how should they go about, because they now want to partner with the existing structure there, but to have a confined area. Because currently where they're having these initiation schools, it's almost like just invading municipal space. Now they've been given a go-ahead for a dedicated area, and they just want to follow the right processes, and where the same support can then be given to them in combination, but I don't know how to put it, but they want to come up with something semi-professional. Thank you.
Member Quensu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. At least by the end of this financial year, you'll be relatively perfect, you know, in pronouncing my surname. It's not that difficult. Okay. Let me also welcome the MEC for appearing before the committee with his executive. You see, looking at the mandate of the portfolio, but like the sports side, sport and recreation side, you know, and people were expected to be at the forefront of it is youth. Now, one has an interest as to who is the youngest person in your executive and what is his or her age, right? Because if indeed you are in that relative space and you know your constituents, there has to be an attempt to appeal Okay. Now, it may sound like as a light up a note, but it's important. I welcome your priorities, MEC. There are two important priorities, which some of us may pay dedicated attention to. But it does not mean the other three is less important, and it shall not be given sufficient attention. The first one related to, and welcome this, what we call the reintroduction of school sports. And I'm happy that you reported here that you are going to engage with your counterpart, Western Cape Education Department in this respect. Having listened to the presentation on this question, and they're quite interesting, and I have a privilege, Chair, of knowing the state of school infrastructure in the suburbs as well as in working class townships. And many of the things said here were quite possibly for Bastion Primary, Pulse Primary and High School, Brackenfell High. Not really for Vuzaman's inside sea, Herigwala, where there is no sport ground, for instance. And therefore, in the course of working on your priorities, I think it would be important then to ensure that your priorities are informed, and this one in particular, that Education Department FEN helps you with the state of sport and recreation infrastructure in these working class schools in this instance. And then you are able to set targets to say, given this, the two of us, right, should set a target in respect to the rollout of this program. Because it will help a great deal in the fight against crime and in taking these young people off the street. And here in your department, you even talk about the after-school sport in this instance. And it is after schools where young people have no activities to perform. And then you are beginning to respond to that particular question. And therefore, there will be a need for accessibility of school playgrounds. Because where majority of people live, there are no playgrounds or sport facilities. They use roads and streets to play soccer and other things in working class townships. That's the reality. And that will be important in this instance. I felt that I must elevate this in the course of modifying and working on this particular priority. That you don't talk to Bastion Primary. And the issue of reimagining libraries. In your report, 2023 or so, firstly, I was made to understand from the office that there was a moratorium in respect to the building of libraries. What's the update on that? But what we understand, according to your annual report, you built only 3. So, where was this 3 built? You know, as a young person, I used to run a campaign, even now, by the way, as a political figure. It's very ambitious. 1 ward, 1 library. 1 ward, 1 library in this instance. You know. But again, it's important, maybe you will help us, is there a sense of, on the rate of the use of these libraries by the general public as well as learners in this instance? What is the rate of visit? And what books or literature is read quite often in these libraries? So I visited 2 libraries. Khayelitsha and Brackenfell. Brackenfell is relatively quiet. You see very few, but I'm not sure about the use value by Brackenfell High and Boston learners. You know. And what about school libraries in this instance? How will the two work together? You know. So this one is very close to my heart because I only came across a library when I got to UWC, when I was doing my first year. UWC library is about how many? 24 levels. Searching for a book, you know, I visited all those levels because I did not know. It was for my first time. You know, so this one is very close to my heart. That was the issue of sports and the issue of libraries and the use value. And indeed, even township libraries visited by scholars and the literature which the libraries are providing. And I like also, Chair, the statement which I think is important to elevate it, that every learner must be encouraged to have a library card. And it should not just end there. That card is used and the learner is able to account. I've been thinking, and how often do my son and daughter bring books from the library? Or just read a book? They are always found here. Have we moved towards ensuring that at least they're able to access them digital, electronic? Rural libraries with no internet. What's the plan? Sport federations. You just named them, you just highlighted it, but you did not indicate the number of them and their concentration and the number of clubs or teams affiliated. And I think I must pose this question. What kind of support do you provide for individual players from schools and local clubs? You know, for example, there is a person named of Zolan Kloko who must represent his local team next month in Sweden. He needs 35,000 to get there. He may miss the opportunity. MEC. How I wish when you live here and you are able to say in the course of either hear off record and say, Member Ngenzo, please link me with his club or with the person. It's not the only one, but at the moment is the only person I know. But I know last year, for example, there are a couple of them in Khayelitsha in this instance. And I hope and trust that at least we can build relations with KDF, because in many instances they approach KDF for assistance. His name is Zolan Trogo. Chair, initiation schools, and I'm happy with your presentation. And you reported about zero rate. It raises another issue here which you could not capture in your presentation. Because the Western Cape is unlike the Eastern Cape, where it's not a challenge to install an initiation school or a bomb. A few days ago, I received a message from a person from Controlesa or something. It's based in Stellenbosch, saying that they are facing a challenge where the municipality is not giving them space to build or mount initiation schools. They get harassed, and what's the plan? You know, so and what is the cooperation of municipalities in this respect? I know the ANC Youth League in the province once had a campaign saying the Table Mountain should be a site for initiation schools. You know, so what's the plan? Because the purpose is to ensure that at least our people are provided with proper site. On languages, as a second last point, on languages, is there a roadmap for the development and the use of the Khoi? You spoke about this, but I could not capture you. Khoi, Nama, and San language. And I think you spoke about, I heard you on the issue of this of the South African sign language, but just on this one, beyond recognition, but to ensure that at least they are being rolled out. I know when in fact, I think it was the first report where it was written in 3 languages, one of the reports, Xhosa, Afrikaans, and English. And we comment, what about this? So that even this community, the San, the Khoi, the Nama, can be able to access and read our documentation in this instance. Is the roadmap. We know it's not going to be done overnight, but it's important to ensure that at least there is a plan. My departing point, Chair, I have a deep interest on the state of equity in the department and its related entities. You may, I'm not here for the first and last time, and I'll be here again. Perhaps the department may need to present that report before this committee as a basis for us, and this committee in particular, to have a sense of the state of transformation in the department, cultural affairs and sports. So that, Chair, as a basis to address what I term an Irish coffee with sparkling chocolate kind of a scenario in respect to transformation, where you, Chair, you are that sparkling chocolate, and the core remains lily white, whilst at the bottom is black. So that report, Chair, I think we may need to get it. And of course, as the Chair has indicated, we are going to do oversight, but I must make the point, I think it's 2 areas. There are reports that still to be confirmed, because to confirm something, I have to physically go there. There are reports that there's a demolishing of a sport facility in Gugulethu, and the attempt by government is to build a hospital. I'm in constant and I'm meeting with Gugulethu Sports Council on Friday, Chair. That I think the department and the office should consider protecting that infrastructure. In as much as we want schools, we want what? Healthcare facilities, but we also want sports and recreation facilities. And at some point, I think municipalities ought to present their plan in respect to building and maintaining sports ground facilities. You go to Gugulethu NY, what? 3A, there are no fence, there are no facilities. This year, what will be your contribution? Gugulethu Sports Complex will be celebrating 30 years since the structure was built. What will the contribution, the role of the department in this instance? And what is the state of the Gugulethu Sports Complex? And to what extent is the complex meeting its obligation in this instance? Those are my comments and as well as questions. Thank you very much.
Member Stevens.
I've only got 2 points to make. One is on access to arts and culture, and the other one, access to sports and recreation services. Our youth are very talented, but the limited opportunities they have to access the arts and culture is a huge challenge. NGOs like joint bands and not gangs have a positive impact on the youth. The only issue is that the youth cannot afford instruments and have limited resources to showcase their talent. On access to sports and recreation, our sports facilities and infrastructure is not conducive to sports. I echo the words of the Minister of Sports. A child in sport is a child out of court. How can okay, I'm not going to do that one. The state of our sports fields is appalling and in a state of decay. Players sustain injuries as a result of the poor quality of the sports terrain. It is broken, dirty, and unkept. it is actually an embarrassment. I'm going to stop reading this. I attended a sports function last weekend. I was invited as the NMPL to a 50th celebration of one of the high schools, Scottsdene High, on the Henson Hart sports field. To me, it was an embarrassment just to see the state of that sports field. There were so many injuries on that field because I don't think that field was ever maintained in the past or the last few years. And just to think that that same sports field is going to celebrate very soon 100 years of existence. I actually took photos inside because there was a time when we wanted to use toilet facilities. You couldn't use it. We had to use a nearby house outside the sports field. And that is how bad that field is. And I mean, there was thousands of people there because it's not like a small field, it's like a very big field. And I know I used to play netball there when I was still in school. But I'm telling you, there was drummies, there was netball, there was rugby, there was soccer. There was a lot of visitors from outside of the Kraaifontein area. Even after the school event, there was club rugby. And I actually wanted to leave with the school after the school event, but then the club, people from the club, Henson Hart Club, they asked me to stay. And I think the reason why they asked me to stay was to see in the way that the guys got injured, and because I know they already sent us a letter in the past, asked me to send a letter to the minister, but I didn't send the letter yet. But I actually experienced it myself on Saturday, how bad that field is. And it's not only the Kraaifontein one. I also visited the one in Citrusdal, and I also visited the one in Riverlands. Okay, the Riverlands one is now gone, because there is no rugby field at the moment. But I seriously would like the department to have a look, especially at the Henson Hart one, Kraaifontein, seeing that they're celebrating 100 years of existence very soon. And it's very bad. Thank you very much.
Chair, Chair, and said, I noticed, the Minister, I noticed you wanted to kick off. We still have a question that came up online from him, Philander. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, thank you. For the sake of time, I'm going to be quick. Chair, just in terms of sports development and preserving the rich sport culture and history in the Paarl, Drakensberg and surrounds. Chairperson, there was an intended development of the Kraal development, which would have included various sports facilities as well as a museum. I would understand if the department may not have all the detail pertaining to that intended development, and we can then make it part of our resolutions. But my question was just going to be whether the province is, the provincial department is partnering with the municipality in that regard, and what the status of that development is. As said, if the information is not readily available, we can make it part of our resolutions. Thank you, Chair.
Then over to the Minister and the department.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I'm going to just address a few of these, but then I'm privileged I've got a whole technical team here, the head of department. If I can just start with the Kraal, I'm not sure if anyone has the information. If we don't have that information on the Kraal development, we'll certainly ask the standing committee to send it through to us, and we'll try and find out more. Thank you, Member Philander. And Member Stevens, if I can just, I was in Citrusdal over the weekend. And also Sunday morning, I went to visit that facility, and I agree with you. Some facilities need more attention than others, and some need severe attention than others. And in fact, what we are now doing, I've asked for a report, and my team has given me the report on all the municipalities that have received MIG funding over the last, I think, 5-6 years. Advocate Boa gave it to me yesterday, the day before, to see where they are, how far the projects are, and we need to really look at how we do it. It's obviously not something we can decide in the Western Cape. The funding goes from national to the municipality, because I also ask what is our role in that process, to see if they're spending the money, how they're spending the money, what is our statutory role, to see how we can help them from an oversight perspective as a department. But as you know, the municipalities are the ones that build these facilities. And obviously the states of sports fields, in schools, that's education department, and we'll certainly raise that with the education department, those facilities, because it does help with obviously reinstating school sport. And then if I can just make one or two comments on my colleague, certainly Guguletu Sports Complex 30 years, it's great to hear that. I've not seen anything that came to me. Certainly, if you have anything, you're welcome to send it through to me. We're also keen to see what they are doing, because it's a big milestone. So we'll certainly look at how one can lift that and profile that more from my perspective. And then with regards to the languages, the initiation school sport federations, the rural libraries, the moratorium, I think my colleagues will respond to that. But the same answer goes around facilities. One needs to look at, Chairperson, how does the municipality spend the infrastructure grant on their facilities? And is there a need to re-look at that model countrywide to see if you apply for the MIC funding, are you using it? Because I can guarantee you there's some municipality that received money for infrastructure and they're spending it on salaries. I can guarantee you there's one of them. I don't want to name names, but there are some of them who's not using it effectively. And yes, the old saying, member, age is nothing but a number. So is how you feel. The Minister of Women, and Children and Youth and Disability, she's not disabled, but she's the Minister lobbying and advocacy for disabled persons, and one has to respect that. She's 68 years old as far as I know, but she's the Minister for Youth, and she's responsible for driving the youth policy countrywide. So one should just have a good advocate for whatever policy you want to implement and whatever policy you want to drive, and not necessarily look at his age of that person. Member Boyson, if you can send that through to us, certainly send it through to me. But as I told somebody the other day, no is also an answer, and we can't help you. It's also an answer. In fact, when I replied to their WhatsApp, they said, well, give me the number for other Mackenzie. And I said, here's his email address. I was very honest, here's his email address. Because if we can't help you, we can't break the law to help you. I'm very honest. I'm not going to go to jail on behalf of somebody else. So can't help you. This is what the rules say. Yes, the other Mackenzie's email address, and you're welcome to email him. But please email it through to us, and we'll certainly have a look at it for what the rules say. And Member Van Minnen, I share your sentiments around the libraries. I don't know more about the human libraries. If you can share that more with me, I'm keen to have a look at it. But maybe there's an expert here, Michael Fayansa van Rensburg here. Perhaps he knows more than I do, but I certainly don't know much more than that. Member Kasim, thank you for the questions. The team is here as well. I don't know what the latest is on Robin Nurok, but the team can respond on that, on the questions, including the archiving questions, and I'm sure the report, if the committee send that request through to us, we can make the details available as you requested. But the rest of the questions are left to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Minister. So we've allocated questions to each other, and I'll just cover a few, and where I miss a few things, the colleagues will cover. We'll start with Member Kasim's question around the archives and just an update on that. Yes, there is still a shortage of space in the Western Cape Provincial Archives. Western Cape Provincial Archives are full to capacity, and we were pre-COVID just on the verge of having a new wing built for the archives. We were at a stage where we were about to go out to tender, and then in December, just before COVID, we got to learn about COVID in 2020. We were then informed that the project has been deferred for later, and then COVID happened. So it's kind of fallen back on the list of priorities following the infrastructure priorities that emerged post that. But there's a lot of work that we've done already to try and make sure that we do get that extra wing. What we are also doing is, Nomaza, the provincial archivist, is going to set the Western Cape government a deadline as to when the archives will stop accepting paper-based records. If we don't do that, space will forever be an issue. So we are just trying to see the state of readiness of all the governmental bodies around the Western Cape so that we can set a date that is reasonable for all, but also a date that will get people to start moving towards digital-born records, because that is the way of the future. The other one on the Robin Newrock building, in 2015, the Western Cape government gazetted the Cape Town Museum, and we looked at various buildings that we thought we could have that museum in, and one of them was the Robin Newrock building. Then what happened was there was a homelessness crisis post-COVID, and we had to relinquish that building. We had plans to get that building refurbished through the Department of Infrastructure. Asbestos was the main issue there as well. It's quite an old building, but we relinquished that building at that point, and I believe it's still available for any other use, but we are no longer interested in that building. We are looking elsewhere. So Robin Newrock is no longer our site of choice for the Cape Town Museum. I'll then speak to the indigenous languages, and Carol will conclude wherever I miss. The indigenous languages, we've had a very key focus, especially on the Nama language. We've produced documentation, Teach Yourself Nama booklet. It's available in different formats. It's available as a book, physical book, but it's also available in digital formats. Has been translated to the different languages, so that if you are learning using your own language, there's a Xhosa one, there's a Afrikaans one, and there's an English one, and we've made a lot of investment in that language. However, with language, you have to speak the language. So that bit we've done, and it's very good, and it's been very useful for those communities who are using it. But to try and then encourage communities, especially the older folk, to speak the language in the presence of the children. We have a huge challenge with English. English is becoming the preferred language almost everywhere. And as you may appreciate, when you speak one language over and over, you tend to forget the other one. But I can assure you, so far, I still dream in isiXhosa, so I haven't quite lost it. But there is a huge risk. So what we've tried to do is partner with Namibia. We had a professor from Namibia, together with UCT, that was running a course in Khoikhoi at UCT. That has now stopped. We've now picked up a new relationship when we were out in India with our colleagues from Namibia who were there, and they are going to be doing a government-to-government program. The person we spoke to was a native speaker of Khoikhoi, so we're going to try and build on that. And then what we've also done for the Ngu language, which is most at risk, I think there's only about 3 people left now, with Oma Katrina being one of them, and she's over 90 years old. We did some theater around that. We told Oma Katrina's story using dance, but having her narrate her story using Ngu, but having subtitles just to popularize it. But the National Department has gone further and has documented most of the language. But it is, I mean, it's at high risk. Only 3 speakers currently alive. But they are doing quite a lot of work, the National Department, to try and get more younger people speaking it. So the indigenous languages are definitely receiving the support, but the main part where we're not quite getting it yet is getting people excited enough to converse in the language on a daily basis. And then the other one that I've allocated to myself is the initiation. The gentleman, Mr. Williams, I hope you meet him soon. He is the leader of our initiation program in the Western Cape, and has done quite a lot to get Western Cape initiation to be where it is. We might not have the challenges that the other provinces have, but what they have in traditional leaders, we don't have. So in the Eastern Cape, for instance, the traditional leadership is intricately involved in running the program. Never mind some of the challenges they have, which are huge. But it does help when you have a consistent social structure involved. In our case, the initiation forums which we work with are very fickle. Parents opt in and out to the initiation forum, sometimes based on when some of their children are going through the rite of passage, and then there's a few consistent across the province. So there are a few consistent traditional leaders within the Western Cape that are consistently involved, but the broader sense is that the members change quite a lot, and it does have an impact on us being consistent. The training that we do, sometimes we train Amakankata this year, and next year they are no longer available to support, etc. But you mentioned music to your ears. That was music to my ears when I'm hearing there are people who can set aside land. We've been working with municipalities, and quite successfully well. It's a few municipalities where we have difficulties to get municipalities to take initiation to be part of their spatial development frameworks. It's your people. It's their culture. They will practice it. Make sure that it is done in a dignified way. When you are allocating space, make sure that adequate space is allocated to it. Now you have some of the key initiation sites, sometimes like Jokabi and others, getting taken over by communities for housing purposes. If municipalities can plan to say that land and agree within the community, using the various community structures to say that is dedicated for initiation, and make sure that it's in the plans, it does not conflict with any future housing development, etc., then we will be onto a good wicket. And I think what you've shared with us is very positive, and we would be happy to enter into a conversation with them. With Amahlubi in the past, there was a farmer that they worked with, I just forget the town, but in one of the rural towns, who would make his land available, and Amahlubi would use that land, and it was a wonderful partnership. So we are looking for those partnerships where the landowners are either private or whether they are local government or national government, because some of the land is owned by Eskom, some of the land is owned by National Public Works. But the main things we are looking for is initiation is not going to go away. It is a cultural practice that needs to be planned for very intentionally, so that there's some dignity in it. There was another initiation question, the Stellenbosch matter. So Themba and Carol are going to cover that one on Stellenbosch. And before he covers that one, I want to say it pains me sometimes, because Stellenbosch was the most progressive municipality at some stage on initiation. They were the first ones to put out bylaws to support initiation. And this matter here, which is not really a Stellenbosch matter, is a community matter, has kind of tainted the municipality's reputation within the initiation space. But that site that is in question and that is in dispute, the initiation forums have been there for about 25 years, working very well with the municipality until the recent challenges, which I believe are now in the courts. But Themba has got the latest updates. And then the last one, before I hand over, would be no, I think I've covered all of. Oh, with WCED and infrastructure, I just want to let the team to please cover in your response the shared facilities and how that has been working, and how future shared facilities in our conversations with WCED can cover the areas that the member referenced. So I'll now hand over to Cecilia to take her questions, and she'll be followed by Themba and Carol, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, HOD. I'll start with the questions around Wi-Fi, rural library connectivity, and so on. So the metro libraries, the 104 metro libraries, they are given internet access through SmartCape, through the metro. So they're very good in that way. So we provide internet access at the rural libraries. So we have 232 libraries with internet access. That leaves with the metro library, that leaves around 40 libraries without internet access. This is for various regions. We do have library service points in correctional services, quite a few. For those, we cannot give internet access because internet access is not allowed, so we'll never have 376 out of 376 with internet access. Then there's also the question of infrastructure. So, for example, we've got Vleyland Library, which is in Beaufort West. Currently, it's in a church hall. It's a couple of shelves. So this year, we are actually able to upgrade them into a modular big library, and now we can give them internet access. So they will get internet access. Where the space is too small or there's not enough security for internet, we work with Cape Access, e-centers, and 2 song centers to see how can we bring internet to those communities. But yes, we can certainly provide a list of libraries with internet and libraries without internet. The Wi-Fi at the libraries is not provided by our department. The Wi-Fi is provided by CEI.P. It's part of a broadband project. We are working very closely with them, and we are lobbying for Wi-Fi inside and outside our libraries. We're on the Comm, so hopefully as they roll out the broadband 2.0 further, that our libraries will get Wi-Fi access as well. So that looks after the internet access. Then we move over to the assignment. So unfortunately, the assignment is not going to address the unfunded mandate issue. So we are still going to have an underfunded mandate. Municipalities still need to have a contribution where they can. With the B3 municipalities, we fund them almost 100%, and we're trying to. Our provincial treasury has been very supportive over the last 2 financial years. They've given us additional funds on top of our what we call the MRF, which now Municipal Replacement Fund. They've topped it up, so they're very supportive. They know that it's our mandate. So the rural libraries, the B3s, we fund almost 100%. Then the others starts going down. The assignment is formalizing the process and making it so that municipalities can use of their own funding in providing this service to communities. We do know about the human libraries. It's fantastic. We haven't institutionalized it yet, but there are libraries that have decided to start making use of volunteer older people, seniors in the communities, as a way to bring them and make them more part of the community. And so they are starting to pilot that, but it's something that we'll definitely look into and see how we can institutionalize it more and make use of it. We do have the oral history project, which captures, it's a very active project. It's implemented this year in all our municipalities. It captures oral history. So we go out, we talk to the people, we video them, they tell us what the stories, however long they want. We put it on DVD, we put it on YouTube, and so we also try and capture stories from indigenous languages, senior people, and so on. Then we get to the moratorium on building of libraries. So especially when it was COVID and we had that huge cut where we had to focus on keeping our libraries open and focus on paying the salaries of our staff. That's when we first said that we cannot spend the funding on a new library, because if you build a new library, with it comes new staff members and new equipment. So we do not have the funding to expand in that way, because in this fiscal time, our funding is quite limited. So we are not building new library service points at this point, but we are, like with Vleyland, focused on maintaining and expanding those that we do have. That does not mean that we're not growing as a service. So we're going into partnerships, like we opened, you asked about the libraries built. So in the 2023-24 financial year, we built Toosranten, which was upgrading of an old wooden structure, which we took down completely and made it big and new. But we also opened Kalbaskraal, which is not a municipal library. It's with NGO. They provide the space and the staff, and we provide the books and the internet access and the training. So we are trying through relationships with others to expand our service, but we cannot, because of the declining grants, build new libraries that might just become white elephants because we can't fund the books or the staff that goes into them. The rate of use of libraries and which books are read, that we actually capture every year in what we call our annual review. So we can share it with with a member. It shows the top used libraries, the circulation statistics, what they read, which languages, fiction, non-fiction. So we capture those statistics. The municipalities keep library usage statistics with their counters. We don't report formally on that one, but it is available in most municipalities because not every library has a gate counter. So we do keep of the trends. How do we work with school libraries? Where we don't have dual purpose libraries, where the library is on the school ground. Sorry, I see his hands up too.
So, was a follow-up question or was it a misunderstanding?
No, just a follow-up on the parliament which she just responded to.
Okay, just keep in mind afterwards I'm going to give a chance for follow-up questions, but it sounds like there was a misunderstanding.
No, there's no misunderstanding. So, do you suggest to this committee that there are no plans to build new libraries?
Okay, can I ask that you hold that for the follow-up? Yeah, otherwise the responses are going to get, others will be getting a disservice that we're not getting to their responses. So I'll leave it for the follow-up.
So how we work with school libraries, our public libraries work very closely with the schools. If there's no library in the school, because school libraries is the mandate of Education Department, our mandate is public libraries. But where there are no school libraries, our public libraries work closely with the schools. We will give them block loans of books that they keep in a classroom or in the library. We have visits by the librarians. We do classroom visits where we take the school children to the libraries. So we try and establish a relationship because most of our libraries are in close vicinity of a couple of schools. So our libraries work very closely with the schools in that regard. The digital books, your children not reading books. I've got 2 children. They used to read books, hard copy books. They don't read hard copy books at all. They're on the Libby app, which is the app that we provide. So we do provide you with electronic books. If you're a member of the public library, you can join the app and you get from children to adult books, fiction, non-fiction, languages, even some old magazines, newspapers, you get that on our digital books. I think I've covered all the questions for libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on the Stellenbosch matter, to add on what HOT said. So on this one, for example, on the 18th of April, we were in Stellenbosch, where we met with the municipality as well as the forum. So the purpose of that meeting, it was to introduce the new forum, as HOD indicated, that most of our challenges there is that the forums are never actually, permanent members. So they come in and go out. So there were challenges there, which also impacted on the relations between the municipality as well as the forum themselves. But the gentleman, Clement Williams, was championing this cause on this particular matter to ensure that there is cooperation between the municipality as well as the Stellenbosch newly formed forum. Then obviously the issue of Idas Valley, so what the municipality did, therefore gave the Calcutta site as an option, because the Aldous Valley, it's when there was the court matter that said they can continue using the site. So we learned that it was cleared, which meant that now it was no longer suitable and conducive to actually do initiation there. So we engaged with the municipality, and I must say that they've been very supportive and responsive as and whenever we needed them to do so. So it's a matter that is ongoing. Hopefully we will get the resolve as soon as possible on this one. And then on the issue of Plattenberg Bay, the young man that had to be amputated. So the matter was brought to us quite very late. So next week on the 27th, 27 and 28, MEC and the chair and the members, I actually have an appointment there with the hospital as well as the social services. to find the result because we are looking at the transplant. But however, it's a very sensitive matter. Had it been brought to us quite earlier, we would have responded timeously, but also what happened in the process. Clement was able to facilitate social services to go and support the boy as well as the family. But also quite troubling is that the parents were not open to opening a case in this matter, which therefore is prolonging actually the young man getting a transplant, because there has to be a legal process before the hospital can go further. They wanted to find out what happened. Was the legal case open? And the parents said outright they are not going to open a case. So the meeting therefore next week with all the relevant stakeholders, it is for us as stakeholders to find out therefore how do we move forward on this regard, because the young man has to be supported and so on. But the long and short of it is that it was brought to us very late, but we are actually acting on it as we speak. And then on the issue of access to arts and culture, so on that one, as a department, we've got our annual funding that we provide to arts and culture organizations. So it is a 3-tier support, so to individuals, to companies, to NPOs. So with this, obviously, we advertise, and therefore, people will therefore apply. But also what we have seen going forward, for example, for the June, to commemorate June 16, we had a program in Beaufort West where we launched the new way of how we are going to run our campaigns so that we can get more organizations and young people to actually get support, because that one we've picked up that those who seem to be in the urban areas and so on, they tend to be able to apply as and whenever it's needed. But now we're moving further afield to make sure that the organizations out there, they are also able to tap into the funding that we have. So what we therefore did, just as an example, in Beaufort was on Friday, we began with a broader awareness campaign where we invited National Lotteries Commission, the Department of Arts and Culture, National. We also invited the National Arts and Culture Trust Commission as well, so that in the house, the young people and the organizations have got access to this number of funding organizations, so that they know that it's not only DCAS that they can actually get the funding, but there are also these other organizations that are there. But also in addition to that, we now really working close with municipalities to close the gap, to make sure that more organizations, they are getting the support that they need. So annual funding is there, in-kind support is there as well. Sometimes they write to us and say, look, all we need is a venue, or we need sound, or and so on and so forth. Then our colleagues will therefore make the necessary resources available to them. But also just lastly on that one, we've got, if you look at the city of Cape Town, I'm sure my party will talk to that, we've got a protocol agreement, which already we are in conversation with them to say, how do we also close the gap of double dipping? Because we've picked up that some organizations within the Cape Metro will be funded by us, but also by the city of Cape Town. But then now we are in conversation where we are saying, they will give us the list of who they are funding. We also provide this, then we can say, okay, we can't fund it because you have already funded it. Therefore, the limited resources that we have now, we can extend them to other organizations that ideally would not have been able to because, they didn't have the opportunity to do so. So we're working very hard on that to make sure that we sensitize the larger communities out there about the funding opportunities that are available. Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am.
Just in addition, because Themba has covered the initiation and some of the arts and culture funding, in terms of the language and our going forward in terms of the plan, we are aligning the development of the Khoi and San languages also through the cultural commissions, through the Western Cape Cultural Councils. We have various councils that have registered with the WCCC. And through that, we are aiming to have our language unit involved in all of the events that the Cultural Commission with the councils are going to roll out for this year. And that basically looks into documenting the language, because we've also established that some of the councils are teaching the Khoi language to young people that go through the events. And that is one strategy that we are looking at getting into. Thank you.
Thank you, HOD. I'll just cover the question on heritage with regards to the, let's call it the willful neglect of provincial heritage sites. So I think the first thing to do, any member or any community member that notices a historic building that is in a state of neglect, is to report it to Heritage Western Cape. What we will do then from our side is we'll send out a heritage officer to do an assessment. The assessment involves firstly to check whether this is actually a provincial heritage site and not just a building that's perhaps older than 60 years. If it's a building that's just older than 60 years, it's not formally protected. And so then there is little that we can do. Then it becomes a matter of if the building is in neglect to the state that it might be breaking municipal bylaws, then it becomes a matter for the municipality to address. If it is in fact a provincial heritage site, then part of the assessment is to determine the history of that site. When we moved from the National Monuments Act to the National Heritage Resources Act, all national monuments became provincial heritage sites. And so the question around those sites are, is that still a provincial heritage site? And so one of the options is to unproclaim it as a provincial heritage site, and so to remove that protection. That's the one, and then it becomes like any other property or building that's older than 60 years. You have to apply for a permit to repair it. If it remains a provincial heritage site, we will then start a process of liaising with the property owner, because it is the property owner's responsibility to make sure that the site is maintained. Sometimes the property owner is not willing, or they are under financial constraints, or that type of thing. We escalate these matters to SARA where possible. We communicate with the municipalities where possible. We've gone into heritage agreements with property owners. Ultimately, there is a mechanism in the National Heritage Resources Act that allows HWC, that once all other options have been exhausted, to actually step in and repair the property, and then try and recover the money from the property owner. But that obviously comes with its own consequences and sometimes unintended consequences, and that is a last resort. Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair. So a couple of questions. So I'll start with Member Kasim, the one about the school kids and the international checks. From our side, we fund all school children up to national level. So in other words, any tour that is done must be on the approved South African schools championships. So we do not fund anyone outside of that. So there are 16 priority codes as decided by the National Department of Sport, and those tours are then fully supported by ourselves. We run the trials for the 16 codes, and after the trials, a team is selected, and those teams normally play in Johannesburg, in Benoni, or in 2022, they participated here in Cape Town as well. So we do not fund anyone outside of that to travel outside the country on any school tour or anything of that nature. We also do not make any school bursaries available. We only focus on the actual child that goes to participate nationally at South African level at that stage. Then the question of clubs versus federations. In terms of the constitution, our national constitution indicates that we work with the provincial federations. So the provincial federations, they number between 150 and 170 when they are active. Our APP indicator stipulates that we will support 130 of them. The way it's done is upon application. The application process opened on 1 June and will close on 30 September. There is a portal that all federations can apply on, and all the forms is given there. This afternoon, Chair, my team is already in the Overberg, where they are meeting with all the sport federations, and all sport federations are invited to that particular meeting. We've sent out the notices, and they will then be going through the forms, how to fill it out, what you need, AGM minutes, audited financial statements, etc., so that we then clearly demarcate what our funding guidelines have indicated. We are doing this in all 6 districts, and we have informed the district sport councils as well as sport federations. So today is Overberg. Next week the team will be in Overberg and will be in Beaufort West. So they will do Eden, Central Karoo, one trip, and thereafter they will then do West Coast and Cape Town and Cape Winelands, etc. So with that, we meet every sport federation. So the key thing, Chair, is Member Boyson asked the question, clubs versus federations. In terms of the club development program that we also run under Mr. Tutu, that is a national funding that is made available. So the national funding comes through the conditional grant, and there is a framework, the national conditional grant framework, that determines how we spend the money. The amount is about 10 million rand, give or take a few cents, and no money is transferred to clubs. So we transfer to federations, that is in terms of our equitable share, but in terms of the club development, no funds is transferred to any club. If a federation nominates a club onto the club development program, as Mr. Tutu said earlier, we will pay up to a certain amount transportation to league matches, equipment and attire as well. And then we also invite those clubs for training purposes as well. So the key then is that the federations have to nominate. We as officials do not decide. We await the application process from the federation on those sides. And we follow the criteria that has been set out in the club development grant blueprint, as well as in the framework. So we are quite happy, Chair, if we need to send this to Mr. Matthews, we can do that because it is a public document at the end as well. In terms of the people involved with the youth and so forth, on our side, we run the MOD program, and in our MOD program and neighboring school, we have 600 coaches, of which 50% of them is between the ages of 18 to 40. The rest goes a bit older as we get more senior people involved with the admin, but we have quite a big youth cohort that serve as our coaches as well. I will come now to the infrastructure. I want to talk about 2 things within the infrastructure. Danielle here will deal with the WCD infrastructure, and so she will talk to that, but allow me to speak to the infrastructure relating to municipalities. In terms of Schedule 5B of the Constitution 1996, the facilities are all run by municipalities. So all facility issues that has been raised by the various members, we will certainly take up with the relevant municipality, as Minister has indicated, and we do have an implementation protocol with the City of Cape Town. I meet with them once a quarter with my team. We are meeting in mid-September, and we will certainly raise those issues so that they can respond, hearts and hands, not Citrusdal and all the other issues within the city, but certainly with Citrusdal, we will also take that up with the relevant municipality as well. Then the Tabu will pick up on what support we give to individuals. So the individual support is called high performance funding. If there's any athlete or individual who will be representing the country, they need to first get Protea colours, and there's a particular form for that called National Colours 1, which is then the form that the SASCOC CEO signs, and then there's a second form called National Colours 2, which is SASCOC signs that one to indicate that it is a legitimate national or international tournament that is being that the athlete is going to attend. If those documents are then sent to us by the federation, that would then trigger our high performance funding, which is 10,000 rand per athlete, and we have cut to a maximum of 8 per code. So we cannot fund sometimes a whole team of 15, whatever the case may be, because there's other codes of sport. So we can assist, and Mr. Tutu will certainly pick up on the young man to see if he may qualify as well. Then the Tabu, you've got a Google question. We'll come to that now. Infrastructure we've covered. the hands and hearts we'll pick up with the city people as well. And then the kraal issue, a few years ago, I had knowledge of this matter. The land was owned by the National Department, and the National Department of Public Works and our Department of Public Works here needed to meet because they couldn't get a meeting of the minds in terms of who must do what with the property. So, Chair, members and Minister, I will certainly ask Drakenstein's MM what the situation is relating to the kraal. So, Chair, if you'll just allow 2 more inputs, Daniel, about the shared facilities as well.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chief Director. Members, thank you very much for the question with regards to infrastructure. It's clear that you share the same passion that we have around sports. So to us, it also is a huge problem. And what we've done with WCD is decided to build shared facilities. So because it's difficult to maintain all existing facilities, we've decided to build or upgrade a facility that can be accessed by multiple schools. So at the moment we have 6, Lavendale, George, Lentegeur, Malmesbury, Beaufort West and Kraaifontein. So this is a multi-purpose facility, softball, netball, hockey, also has an indoor facility, and it's accessible to a cluster of schools, as I've said. So education have managed to secure those funding. It's built by the Department of Infrastructure. For the next MTEF period, we have secured 180 million to conclude all of these shared facilities, and then we will start bidding and proposing for a shared facility in Overberg and Cape Winelands as well. So the core of the facility is around benefiting school-going children for school leagues, and then also some club sports where the clubs are school children who participate in those clubs. I think also to say that we are partnering with NGOs, for example. So in Gugs, we have a partnership with a Mandla who's got a beautiful facility right next to a school. So where NGOs are building facilities, we're partnering with them, bringing our coaches there and also equipping them with resources. And as the Chief said, also working with municipalities around where they have sports facilities, how can we ensure that schools have access to those facilities? And importantly, also around the equality question, looking at schools that have wonderful facilities, why can't schools who don't have those facilities access the schools that do have? So definitely is a key priority for us around infrastructure, but bringing partners on board through the network management approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You know, when Member Boyson started speaking, I thought he was going to raise a boxing matter because he's a former boxer and he's a big boxing supporter. Chair, around Guguletu Sport Council on Friday last week, when we came back from our strat plan, I had a meeting with the Guguletu Sport Council committee around the request that they sent to the department. So I requested them to send us their needs, and I said to them, we are not going to cover everything, but we will make a contribution. So they have duly sent that. In fact, this morning I was on a phone call with the chairperson. We're going to organize another meeting with them. Although I told them that their request has come very late because we plan a year in advance. And then in terms of the facility in Guguletu that you're talking about, that we are going to have a meeting with the Guguletu Sport Council, just to give you a little bit of perspective. 3 years ago, Dr. Makwaga from Guguletu, who's a philanthropist in Gugs, requested our intervention in terms of having the school to open up that facility where he wanted to create a sports academy. So we had discussions with the school, and the school allowed him to develop that field which was lying dormant. And that school is now, I mean, those fields are now being used by junior football in Guguletu. And then there was an issue around the city that wanted to take over that facility to turn it into a hospital, and that made the community to be up in arms with regards to that, but it is still in negotiations. I don't know where that has ended, but you are at liberty to have a discussion with them. And in terms of the athletes that we support, you know, the Western Cape is its own worst enemy, because we are a conveyor belt of producing world-class athletes. So all the time, and the department is inundated with requests from sport clubs, from federations, where there are these tournaments that go overseas and they cost an arm and a leg. And I mean, if you can imagine, member, how many sport athletes we have in the Western Cape that want to travel overseas, and it is unsustainable for the department. But we support federations in terms of taking, I mean, provincial teams to national games, which they apply to the department for. Yeah, thank you.
Right, colleagues, I want to point out that we are half an hour over time, and look, as I said earlier, it's important that we find one another here in terms of the same information and the same picture in our minds. What I suggest is that follow-up questions that we converted into either writing it directly to the minister, or alternatively turn it into formal questions to the House that the ministers have to formally answer. I do get the impression most were answered. The follow-ups will probably be more also issues that will come up in future discussion in the committee. So I do suggest we wrap up with this particular component. What I just want to say, I actually kept my own questions on exactly that same basis, kept my own questions back. I will just, first of all, thank you very much. I certainly like dealing with both the committee members and the officials that I see here with passionate people. One can see the passion for what you do. I think we were strong on the qualitative component of giving feedback. This is contrary to my previous life as a politician. I actually miss the quantitative things a little bit. I think there is a issue of reliable data measuring what you are setting out to do. I think there's also, given that this committee is part, well, we have police oversight and community safety as part of this committee, there's going to be transversal data sets in place as well. And I'll give an example. If there's an accurate measurement in place of children right up to young adult level being very busy in schools and very busy at sport clubs, and we can measure the frequency and we can actually see the impact it has in terms of crime in specific areas, that is incredibly useful for us to recommend policy. It will be useful to you. And I can also say it will help you to quantify as departments that, in my view, play a very important role, but always are, certainly in my previous life in other spheres of government, are always on the last in the queue to receive resources. You know, so if you want to, if we're going to make an argument for an integrated approach to get our youth, and not just the youth, but everyone, all the groupings that we are targeting, and get them into a good cycle in terms of their mental and cultural and physical space, whichever way you want to frame it, if you can quantify it, and you can make, in a sense, a business case for the benefits it has. For example, the health impact in the health department, less people getting stabbed, less people drunk, you know, getting into accidents for drunk driving, less, a better bang for your buck when it comes to policing. That's where I also think the true relevance in that type of measurement lies with this department. So I hope that made sense. It's a little bit of, it's opposite to what I usually say in settings like this. But if we measure the right things, It's a virtuous cycle in terms of resources, in terms of making good policies. If we measure the wrong things and measure it in a fragmented manner, then obviously it will make it difficult for all of us. So I think that just where you get your data and what it is and what it measures, it will be the basis of my personal interactions. With those words, thank you very much. The department, I know you're half an hour here longer than you were supposed to be. Thank you very much, and we're excusing you. There's one or two things we still have to do in terms of housekeeping in the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
I was getting a selfie by the looks of it. Colleagues, then the next item on the agenda was really feedback on the process of oversight visits. You'll see a draft document based on the community safety, police oversight and community safety section. There's a draft that's been produced. However, that is not the program or the proposed program at this stage. Obviously, we have to go through a similar exercise with sports, arts and culture. So what I suggest is exactly the same process where next week, let's make it, by today is the 21st, a week's time by 12 o'clock, the 28th, that all inputs from anyone, any member of the committee, in terms of sports, arts and culture oversight proposals, that reaches, and please send it to the protocol officer. Please CC me in. There was a bit of a miscommunication there. But the key thing is, colleagues, that I really want us to do justice to both departments. Now, as a next step, we can consider, I must just speak to the protocol officer, doing it in a more of a workshop format, but that we take all the proposals that were made. And I'm happy to say I see alignment. A lot of the things we seem to be, most of the things we have in common, but that we go through a workshop exercise in this committee where we look at, first of all, the things that are immediately relevant. You know, there are some things that are a little bit more immediate, some things that are a little bit more urgent. Some of the things can be combined. You know, one example that I see is you can combine oversight visits to the forensic center in Plattekloof with content-driven oversight around crime intelligence. We can even relate that to the drug houses and use that as a kind of a case study. I don't want to preempt anything, that exercise. I'm just using that as an example. But we look at the things that can be aligned and combined. We look at obviously we need to look at our resources. I'm a very stingy committee chair. And then, so that we need to consider. And colleagues, I really want this to be as inclusive as possible of everyone's concerns. If we have well-chosen oversight visits, well-chosen content-based visits, then all of us benefit, and that's the purpose of the exercise. So even if we go a little bit slow in the beginning, it helps us to do far better in the future. That's the approach that I'm suggesting. So, colleagues, are you happy with that as an approach?
Yes, Chair.
100%. The online colleagues?
Chairperson?
Member Philander?
Chair, I just wanted to make sure, based on what was on the screen right now, I assume that is with members' input. Is that document still open for input?
Yes. That Member Philander is the document as it stands. Obviously, the sports, arts and culture inputs still need to be included there. And if there's anything else that we've missed that you are thinking of, maybe after the previous deadline, it's entirely fine to still add new ideas to the pool. The firm deadline for inputs is the 28th of August, 12 o'clock. And colleagues, then we move into finalization mode. And as I said, we look at what things can be combined, or what we look at our resources, we look at what's urgent, we look at what's relevant, and we do it on a manner that if we do it properly in the next session, then the rest of our oversight is going to work better as well. Is that acceptable?
Thank you, Chair. That is clear indeed. Chairperson, I just wanted to ask, I did peruse the document as it is presented, whether it is perhaps possible to slot in perhaps a joint engagement with the Standing Committee of Social Development with regards to child and human trafficking. I think that has become also a very huge concern, if we can maybe consider to include that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll make a note of it. Not just the specific point of social development, I would suggest that we also look at, as part of the content-based oversight, what would combine well with other departments. But if you can capture that as part of the draft, what Member Philander just indicated, let me just see whether there is anyone else. Colleagues, are we in agreement? Can we conclude? Then thank you very much. The agenda for the next meeting, the 27th of August. Yeah, colleagues, I'm just sorry. Let me amend the deadline. Can we make the deadline the 26th of August? Sorry, my apologies. I got mixed up. So we have those inputs before our next meeting. That, I take it that makes better sense. I would suggest then the next meeting is that discussion of our oversight that we want to do. That's where we finalize it. Colleagues, I would prefer in person. Let's do it on the same basis as this meeting, in person. And if somebody really can't make it, then we'd have an online availability. Great. Thank you very much, colleagues. So then the meeting is concluded.